Good evening. I'd like to call to order the regular town council meeting for Tuesday, December 13th, 2022. Please rise for a moment of silence. We'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's cute. I saw that picture. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Allenson? Here. Carmody?
Here.
Fishbein?
Here.
Laffin? Marone?
Here.
Tata? Testa?
Here.
Zandri?
Here.
Chairman Cervoni.
Here. First thing on the agenda is the presentation of certificates to Wallingford Vikings football team, the Shoreline Conference 5th grade division champions. Mayor.
Indeed, ladies and gentlemen, we have before us none other than the 2022 Shoreline Conference 5th grade division champions. Woo! This makes this one great meeting. So I want to invite up the head coach, Brian Whalen, to tell us a little bit about this team.
Hello? All right, you got me. I don't know if I need the mic, but anyway, I want to thank the council. Thank you very much for doing this, acknowledging these young men here. They had a great season. It was a lot of fun. And especially Christina, thank you very much for pulling some strings for us here. You parents have heard it all from me before. You know, the mayor gave me an opportunity to get up here and speak, and it's nothing you haven't heard, so I'm going to regurgitate some stuff. But great athletes and great kids make for great coaches. And honestly, that's what we have this season. These kids are a bunch of great kids, not only athletes, but just in general, kids, students, and they were a lot of fun. And it was our pleasure. It was my pleasure, and I'm sure I can speak for the rest of the coaches when I say this. It was our pleasure coaching you guys this year. So well deserved, great season, and we look forward to being back up here next year, right, fellas?
On? Yes. All right, I'm going to invite first the suspense of the players' names. First, we're going to start with the coaches. If the chair would like to come down, I want to invite up Brian Whalen, head coach. And next up, oh, good, Christina. Next up is, yep. Next up is Jake O'Brien. Jake O'Brien here. I'm going to take that for him. And then we have Richard Van Dyke. Congratulations. And none other than Ed Eckert. And is this Chouanier? Brian Chouanier? And Keith O'Brien. Congratulations. Sean Reynolds. Rich Van Dyke. Bristol Godbout team manager. Woo! It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. No, we don't want them going home yet. We have some very talented young people who have shown great discipline and ability. So that's also why we're here. And we start with Drew Eckert. And Troy Whalen. And Finn Galreni. Congratulations, Finn. Ryan Tansley. Well done, Ryan. Jaden Diana. Congratulations. Robbie Barrow. Well done, Robbie. Camden White. Camden, come on down. Well done. Isaiah Forbes. Isaiah. Congratulations, Isaiah. Chase Jakubiak. Well done, Chase. And Brian Chionier. Super. Kyle Bickelhop. Well done, Kyle. Max O'Brien. Well done. And Joshua Filipowicz. Joshua. Well done. Filipowicz. Okay. Rayan. Yeah. Rayan Ahmed. Well done. Oh, over here. Over here. And Matthew Flipowitz. Well done. Braden Antonelli. Henry Whitehouse. Well done. Oh, wait, over here. Tyler Ginter. Cole Howlett.
Still giving you credit. The adults wouldn't do it.
Little applause for Cole, even though he's not here. Vinnie Jordan. Well done. Colin McCarn. Great going. Nelson. Well done. Daniel Frank. Braden Greenlaw. Danny McGinnis. Danny McGinnis. Jay Capoli. Ethan Johnson. Christian Kraus. Michael Manzanino. Jack Gutman. There you go, Jack. Max White. Evan Brawley. Proud of you. Sean Reynolds. There you go, Sean. Omar Yakhtar. Jack McMahon. All right, a time. First, we're going to have 1, 2, 3 cheers for these champions. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Hooray! Now, an opportunity for pictures if you want to come down here. What's that? Oh, no, I shouldn't be in the picture. Oh, my word.
Like 50 more years.
Oh, my word.
It's all right. All right, we'll give everybody a minute to clear the chambers before we resume our meeting.
it almost ruins the excitement when you came in and found the place full and like they're all eating. What?
I said if we made them go last, everybody.
Oh, I know. Yeah, right.
All right, if I could please get a motion on the items not removed from the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve or accept consent agenda items A through H and J through S.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, those items on the consent agenda pass. Item 4, item 3I has been removed from the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to accept the donations from Choate?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve, I move we approve and accept the donation from Choate to enhance the play area at Doolittle in the amount of $2,000.
$20,000.
$20,000.
You get a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Councilor Zandri, your item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to take the opportunity just to discuss this item. When items are added to the consent agenda, we don't discuss them. And you know, over the years, whether I was on council or even before I was on council, you know, there's this polarizing when it comes around to Choate, Rosemary Hall, and you know, a lot of times we get into different conversations of, you know, Choate's status in town, the things, you know, that the properties that they buy and they remove from the tax rolls and the different requests they make of the town. And a lot of the times these elements come back to, you know, what does Choate do for Wallingford? And, you know, a lot of times you can't pinpoint or outline something. So I just wanted to take this opportunity, and I'll apologize to Choate in advance. I think their intention was to do this, you know, not quietly. I don't really. They wanted to do. I imagine they wanted to do it without fanfare. They met with the mayor, and they had a discussion, and they made this donation. But I wanted to call it out. You know, again, in my time, you know, I've been critical of Choate when I deemed it was necessary, and you know, any time that they've stepped up to the plate, I've given them credit too. And I wanted to take this opportunity just to kind of express my personal thanks, but also to kind of get it out there a little bit more on the record. For them to acknowledge the different things that are going on in the town, a town that they're a part of and they're as invested in as the rest of us, to say that they were also upset about what happened at Doolittle Park, and to step forward with a $20,000 check towards any efforts that we make through our insurance or whatever else that we might do to reestablish the gathering place. And, you know, I just felt it was important to kind of call it out. So, again, I understand that the possibility was that Choate just wanted to do this and let it go. I wanted to call them out for the deed that's being done here and to thank them personally. That's really the only reason I removed it, was just to discuss it and kind of bring it to the forefront. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Senna, am I correct to think that this will come back on the agenda to appropriate when we're ready to use, like, accept the insurance funds and other things to get the project done?
That is correct.
So perhaps when we have it back on the agenda, we can get somebody from Choate to come and represent them for being, while being acknowledged. So, any other questions or comments from the council? Questions or comments from the public? There being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes. Public question and answer period. Wow, unprecedented. I will close the public question and answer period. On to item 6. Can I get a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the action regarding the intermunicipal agreement sanitary sewer and water connection for 77 Midland Drive.
Second.
We do have a representative from the Water Sewer Division here for us. Mr. Amwake, if you could join us for a few minutes.
You know, before Neil gets up here, just in case you didn't notice, you had already approved this agreement when it was for 2 property owners. one of the property owners decided not to do it. So, because they altered the agreement slightly, I felt that the PUC should see it again, and so that's why it's back here. But you did approve this earlier this year when it was the two neighboring property owners project, just so you know.
Thank you for being here, Mr. Amwake. I thought it might be helpful to understand, who's paying for this. Whenever there's a service installed, there's a cost associated with it and ongoing service and maintenance and the like. And if you could just briefly explain that to us.
Sure. Well, why don't I start with a prepared statement, and then I'll go into the question. At the July 19, 2022 Public Utilities Commission meeting, the Commission voted to approve an intermunicipal agreement between the City of Meriden, the Town of Wallingford, Nancy M. Norkey of 77 Midland Drive, and Brian and Brenda Monroe of 75 Midland Drive. At the August 16, 2022 Town Council meeting via consent item 3X, the Town Council also approved the intermunicipal agreement between the above parties. Since that approval, the owners of 75 Midland Drive removed themselves from the agreement before it was signed by all parties. Therefore, in order for the owner of 77 Midland Drive to connect to the sanitary sewer system, a new intermunicipal agreement has been drawn up by the attorney working for Mrs. Norkey. The proposed intermunicipal agreement is between the City of Meriden, the Town of Wallingford, and Nancy M. Norkey. The intermunicipal agreement has been reviewed by the City of Meriden, Wallingford Water and Sewer Division staff, and the Wallingford Department of Law. All comments from each party involved have been addressed. The agreement is similar to the one previously approved, with the only changes being the removal of the owners of 75 Midland Drive from the agreement. In general, the intermunicipal agreement allows Mrs. Norkey to connect to the private sanitary sewer lateral and become customers of the Meriden municipal sanitary sewer systems. The intermunicipal agreement also allows for the property to be connected to the Meriden municipal water system at some future time. There is no plan to connect the residents to the Meriden municipal water system at this time. So to answer your question, Chairman Cervoni, the costs to install this are borne by the property owner. It is essentially a private sanitary sewer lateral. The reason we have the intermunicipal agreement is because the residence itself is located within the geopolitical boundaries of the town of Wallingford, while the nearest municipal sanitary sewer system, because of topography, is located in Midland Drive in the City of Meriden. The driveway for 77 Midland Drive and 75 Midland Drive actually come off of Midland Drive in Meriden. So it's a question of topography. So the property owners pay for the connection.
Thank you very much. Any questions, comments from the council? Anyone from the public? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you for humoring me.
No, it's a great question.
All right.
It flows downhill.
I'm just going to leave that alone.
Favorite item of the night already.
All right, on to item 7. Councilor Zandri, your item.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, so I had requested this item be added to the agenda regarding establishing a formal process for us recognizing and honoring individuals for service in the town of Wallingford. The reason this came up was really formatting. At the last meeting, there was an item to dedicate the senior center in honor of Iris Papali and her longstanding work here in the town of Wallingford for her service. And it didn't really occur to me while we were discussing the item that the item itself really didn't identify what we were doing, and that we kind of took an action that evening. And I had received a few calls and messages after it started to become part of the public envelope, if you will, right? The meeting was posted, people watched the meeting live, and some watched the recording. It ended up being in the paper, and I started getting calls about what it was that we did. And so I basically outlined, the summary of what occurred at the meeting. And a few of these folks had some commentary that I really couldn't argue against. They said that they didn't have a big issue with them honoring and recognizing anybody's help, Iris Papali's or anybody else's. And they really did make a focus to say it had nothing to do specifically with former Councilor Papali. It was really more about the process in which we did this. The item appeared on the agenda without really declaring what it was we were going to do. So I understood their viewpoint, and I kind of wanted to put the item up here for all of us to discuss tonight, because when we honor and recognize somebody, we might have just been coming up here to thank them for their service if they were alive, maybe if they had passed away, just to spend a couple of minutes in reflection and maybe saying some kind words. What we ended up doing was making a motion and naming the building after her, which it wasn't identified clearly on the agenda. So there were some people that said, I didn't really necessarily have a problem with that, but I might have wanted to have been there. There were other people that said, gee, why the senior center in its entirety? She did a lot of her town contributions through the council and everything else as part of being a town councilor. We already did this chambers after Robert Parisi. A lot of times we use room 315 upstairs. Somebody had said, why wouldn't you have renamed room 315 after her? So this might have been feedback that we might have gotten if the item was better defined at the meeting. And then I also gave some thought about the fact that a lot of times, even though the information is on the agenda, people miss agendas, they miss meetings. So I also wanted to float the idea amongst all of us up here as part of this discussion that maybe even if we clearly identify what it is that we want to do, we agree that that's what we want to do, name a room, name a street corner, whatever it is we want to do, decide that we would support that at meeting 1, and then bring it up 2 weeks later at the next meeting. Not to add items, to the future agenda, but just in case if someone else had a different idea of what they might want to have a particular room or a particular, corner of the town named after somebody, or if they wanted to, come and leave their commentary on what we were doing as well. There was no rush to do this, so again, I'm trying to think about if we could establish a protocol to the exercise. I know we've got other things in town that we've got an established procedure for. Comes to mind quickly, street names. I think the names have to be submitted for approval before they're added to a list of potential future street names. Developers can't just name a street unless it's on an approved list, unless that's changed since the last time I looked that up. I just think that if we had a little bit of a structure around this, we wouldn't have a situation where anybody is caught off guard. There's more outlined to the procedure, and then if we had an exercise like this in the future, it's a meeting to agree to do it and then a meeting to actually do the approval. And I kind of just want to leave it at that for discussion, what folks up here think and what the public might think. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure. So in my time that I can remember, this was the third time that we named something for someone. And I do recall that after Representative Mary Fritz had passed, that because it was a Board of Education building that was going to be renamed, we considered the item. We referred it to the Board of Education for consideration, and then it came back, I think, to us. So there is some precedent for a 2-meeting process. I think in the situation where the council chambers were renamed, Councilor Parisi was sitting up here, and I think we wanted to surprise him. But I do think I agree with you that there's some benefit to making this a 2-meeting process. Whether or not we want to codify it for future councils, I leave up to the council, but I certainly see the benefit of, having a first meeting where you could discuss and deliberate what exactly you want to do if the person who presented it. I don't think Mr. Carmody put it on the agenda with something that specific in mind, but allow the council to deliberate on what we'd like to do, and then take a pre-vote, if you will, and then bring it back for a formal vote to allow the input you discussed. So, Councilor Laffin.
Thank you. Yeah, so a lot of my questions or comments you covered. Probably a multi-meeting thing is the solution. I think people often go for the element of surprise. And, are you thinking conceptually, Councilor Zandri, this is like a council rule that expires with this council's term, or do we move this to ordinance where, similar to like naming a street, there's a process where it gets brought forth and nominated, and then it gets, there's like a waiting period or announcement or something, like a public hearing to give people the opportunity? Is it 2 meetings? Is it 3 meetings?
Well, so my thought process is like this. I think, and I would like to try to establish it formally, so I probably would want to continue it to ordinance. If we support it, we could always send it there to formalize it. And in my discussions, I tried to outline to a couple of folks that kind of found it as a surprise, oh, why are we doing this? We've done it before. The animal shelter, the recreation building for Mr. Doherty. We did it for Yalesville School. We did it for the chambers here. It does happen on a rare occasion, but there's no, when I was asked what's the process, I go, well, we kind of don't really have one. It comes up as people come up. And I think to the element of surprise for the people that are still with us, I think we still have that opportunity. The item can be on the agenda for the discussion element, and the person could be present, and all it does is just get continued to one additional meeting. Because again, the idea might be, there might be, if there aren't family members that could be present, or there might, if it's a true surprise, they wouldn't be there that one night maybe. On the, the future meeting, there might be someone else that might want to come up and say something additional about the person. Say, I don't know if anybody knew this, but so-and-so also helped us do this. So I think it's a great thing that we're doing this. It might just even add to that whole element of why we want to do it in the first place. And I just think that if we get an opportunity to discuss it over, 2 meetings is plenty. If we're all in agreement on the first meeting, the second meeting is almost a formality, but it gives, again, it gives that element of, hey, if the agenda wasn't enough and the first meeting wasn't enough and then eventually ends up in the paper wasn't enough, oh, we're going to talk about it one more time. No one can say we didn't know. And I really would rather invite more people to the process than accidentally exclude by not getting information out. So I would like to see it be something we establish formally, which I guess would grant it to going over to ordinance.
No, the ordinance thing makes sense to me. So, all right, thank you.
Councilor Fishbein.
Since there is a level of permanence to this, there's no sense in rushing at something like this. But, I have to say that Councilor Carmody, I think in his due diligence, did reach out to, I believe, all of us. And anybody who saw the agenda pre the meeting could have called any of us and said, hey, what are you doing? But apparently, at least the individuals that are attempted to be appeased by the item didn't do that. I mean, I shared it with my wife beforehand, what we were going to do, and certainly if anybody had called me, I would have told them. So I don't know that this is so much of a problem. I understand it may be appropriate to have a process, but I know even with the Mary Fritz situation, we had multiple meetings only because the Board of Ed is in control of that building. I think there was no precedent, but we felt it was appropriate. And even after that meeting, we finally did it. I got calls, what do you mean you did this? So I'm open to discussing on ordinance, but thank you.
Well, I think we can refer this to ordinance without a motion. Councilor Marone, I'm sure you wouldn't object to putting this on the next ordinance committee agenda.
If I might just add one more thing. So I don't necessarily disagree with Councilor Fishbein, but I mean, here's the actual item itself, the way that it was put on the agenda, and this is the reason why I wanted to bring this up. Discussion and possible action in recognizing and honoring the longtime community service of former town councilor Iris Papali. That was the entire item. So
if anybody looked at that and they were indifferent to us honoring and recognizing her, and I don't want to pick on Iris Papelli. Let me just remove the person for a moment, because it has nothing really to do with Iris and just about our process, really. If anybody was looking at that and was indifferent to honoring and recognizing somebody, they might just say, okay, they're going to honor and recognize somebody, fantastic. If it was, I'll use myself as an example. I walk the linear trail a lot, all right? So if they were looking to honor and recognize somebody at a meeting, and I'm indifferent to the individual that's in the meeting, great, they're honoring and recognizing this person. And then they decided to name the trail after them, or a segment of the trail that they always walked. If I had known that that was going to be on the agenda, I might ask about it, because I use the trail and I might be super supportive of it, or I might be super against it. I might say, listen, so-and-so dedicated way more time to the trail than this person. The idea is, yeah, you're right. If someone looked at it and had a level of concern about doing something for, now I got to bring Iris back into it. For Iris, they could very easily call us and say, hey, what are you doing for Iris? But there was nothing on this about the senior center. So if anybody had something positive or negative to say about the action of that town-owned building, they wouldn't have known to be here to give the input. They wouldn't even have been triggered by the item to call anybody. But even if that item exactly went back on the agenda the way that it is, it would have been discussed in the meeting about the senior center, and then it would get out and people could say, oh, I'm way for that, or I'm way against it. So I'm not trying to add more process than we really need to, but I think it offers an opportunity to basically advertise or get the information out so that everybody feels included in it. And that's the only reason I brought this up.
Councilor Allenson.
I do appreciate your comments. However, I do feel like this could have just been resolved by maybe an email to say, like, could you be a little more clear on what exactly you're doing? Because we did all talk to Sam as well beforehand, because, you know, we had that opportunity when the item on the agenda was presented as Sam Carmody is asking for this recognition to be done. So, I mean, I'm all for doing whatever it is. Like, I do think there should be a formal recognition process, because frankly, we have a lot of people who have done a lot of long-term service to this town, and eventually we're gonna run out of buildings. But I do also think that, you know, without getting into something more specific about somebody actually had something to say about it, it's just hard to pontificate non-specifically. So I do agree with you, and I did appreciate you putting this agenda item on here, but if it was about that specific thing, or about, like, I think we need a process, because I don't think that we can just continue, like, I don't disagree with, I voted for Iris getting the senior center, you know, I'm all good with that, but, like, eventually, like, we have to know, like, what can we do for long-standing people in the town? So I don't want to erode Councilor Carmody's item, because it was added in, you know, in the right spirit, and we could have asked for an update if we wanted it beforehand, because we did get it a week in advance. So that's really all I have to say.
And I just want to add to that, you know, I want to make sure that I'm crystal clear about that. Had nothing to do with Sam's item really specifically. It's just that when people came back and said, what's the process? I go, I guess we really don't have one, and maybe we should look into that. And again, it's true, we all were kind of tuned in. Sam called us, we called Sam, we asked questions, but the people didn't. And that's my concern. They didn't know. They didn't know enough to ask. So I think we're on the right track. I also wanted to put the agenda item on in case people wanted to come to speak about it, whether they were the ones that contacted me or not. And if no one's got to come, that's great too, but it gives us an opportunity to hear what they have to say too.
And I can appreciate that. Sorry to make this more like a conversation, Mr. Chairman. I can appreciate that too. And again, I do appreciate you bringing it forward because I do think we need a process. But, and I think that's just a collective our bad. We just weren't specific enough. That's all.
Counselor Marone?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, we can certainly talk about this at ordinance, but, you know, I appreciate, I guess, where Jason is coming from, but at the same time, I felt really good about naming that particular building after Iris based on her years of service, and I don't know that, you know, any process is going to be perfect. You know, no matter who you are and how great of a person you are and what you've done for the town, there's going to be someone out there that doesn't like you, right? So there's always going to be someone that has a negative word or something to say about, you know, whoever you name a building after. To me, it's sort of like the purview of the legislature alone, if you're going to name a public building after someone. So, you know, we can certainly talk about it at ordinance. I don't know that I see a need to make it any more of a process if it's something that's happened 3 times in like 10 years. But that's where I am. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Counselor Laffin?
Yeah, I can appreciate the need for discussion and even for a process at the ordinance level, because, and I want to reiterate, like, nothing, I think the way that Councilor Carmody handled the entire thing was fine. It was great. It was perfect. And nobody up here was going to disagree. Everybody thought it was a great idea. And I don't think that had this process existed, that the decision would have changed. But I think what the light bulb going off is that might not always be the case, and that maybe it's better to just have a rational discussion with no names or emotions tied to the discussion about how to handle a process going forward. Does naming a building require, you know, more than the 5 votes? You know, do you just start naming buildings 5 versus 4 people, you know, politically, or does it have to be unanimous, as these past cases have been? I don't know. I just think it's probably a good discussion to have.
Questions or comments from the public? There being none, I guess we will see this item at the ordinance committee meeting. I'm going to jump ahead one and bring up item 9 before we talk about ARPA.
Mr. Chairman, I motion that we move the 2021-2022 unallocated surplus of $34,935 to the 2% fund for the Board of Education.
Second.
Moved and seconded. We have representatives from the Board of Ed. If you could please come forward and introduce yourselves for the record.
Good evening, Tammy Raccio, Board Chair. Good evening, Danielle Velazzi, Superintendent. Good to see everyone tonight.
Good to see you. Miss you guys.
We miss you.
And Mr. Barone is handing out our
Thank you, Mr. Barone.
Yes. Mr. Barone, Business Manager, I'll introduce him.
thank you.
So thank you for having us tonight and for moving us on the agenda. The reason, well, I'll wait for him to finish. The reason why we're here this evening is we wanted to discuss the 2021-2022 unallocated surplus that we have of $34,935. And we wanted to request to move that to the 2% fund. Sorry, we wanted to request to move it to the 2% fund. Do you need me to repeat the whole thing?
If you wouldn't mind, just for the record.
Okay, so we are here this evening to request to move the 2021-2022 unallocated surplus of $34,935 to the 2% fund. So.
Sorry, hi. Okay, so, thank you. So I handed out 2 documents. The first page, or one document, 2 pages. The first page is just a summary of items we talked with the board about that we would possibly utilize this $34,935 if you were to allow us to move it into the 2% fund. And the second document is a summary of the 2% fund as it stands currently. So those are the balances and what they are allocated for. And I laid them out into certain categories. The in-process items, we have some items that are scheduled for summer. We have some items that need to be bid and quoted. We have a special ed contingency, and then we also have some unallocated and funds that need to be reallocated in that 2% fund. So I want to just give you and these numbers should be similar to what the town has. Our numbers are probably a little lower because we process some transactions and it takes a little time to get into the town's books. So if you checked what our balance was, there may be some discrepancy because of the activity that's happened over the last several weeks. All right, and so, we're doing a lot of different projects. Some of them are ongoing, like our digital imaging, where we're automating certain things. We're taking it on in kind of in chunks. We started out with records, like filing cabinet type records, eliminated 30 or 40 filing cabinets, and now we're moving on to do things like we're looking to automate some workflow, almost like doing, maybe for a lack of a better, like a automated PDF, so that when people file requests for reimbursement, those kinds of things, instead of pushing paper, they can fill those out on a requisition, have it all approved electronically, similar to the way we do our purchasing. Some of these projects are, longer term, and that, we did design work for a ball field, and then we're going to look to do the actual field work once we get the design plan in place. And then other ones are one time, are a little quicker that we have to purchase items, so sometimes we just have to bid them and then wait for them to get in. Although with some of these supply chain challenges, those projects are taking longer than they normally used to also. But that, I think, is kind of a summary. I don't know if you want me to go through each one of these. I just wanted to kind of lay out how we had spiked out the money and what the intent was to utilize the money that's in the fund already.
So just doing some quick math, the two numbers at the bottom, the amount that's going to be reallocated because of canceled projects, and then add the unallocated, and I come up with about $424,000. So that's probably a little more than 20% of what you have in the unallocated, what you have in the 2% fund that's currently awaiting plans.
Correct.
Okay. Councilor Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. I'm trying to figure out what I'm looking at. So looking at page 1, I understand that at the end of your budget, you've got $34,935 left, right? So the action that's before us is to take that money and put it in a 2% count, okay? This document really doesn't have anything to do with that action, right? It's a projection of what this money would be used for.
The detail there that totals the 130,000, Councilor Fishbein,
Yep.
those are the items that were presented to the Board of Ed earlier this week as potential items. Should the town council allocate this money to us, we would pick something on there. Obviously, the 130,000 won't cover it. The 34,000 won't cover the 130, but we would pick items from this wish list and add those to projects that need to get done. None of these projects in this 130 have funding associated with them yet, although we have identified their need.
Okay. So the 34,935 would go to whatever is in the 2% account now.
Correct.
And then you'd have a pot of money to do stuff with, right? That's not addressed here at all.
That's the second page. So the second page is the 2% fund. The pot of money that I think that you're talking about are the last items. There's a piece that's remaining and like a residual balance from projects. And to Mr. Cervoni's comment, that gets us to about the 400,000. That would be a way that we could pay for the 130. There'd still be a little bit left over. We had some legislative unfunded mandates that came through last year that we still need to take care of. We have other things that we still need to do with this fund, with projects.
All right, well, I'm trying to, so you're saying that on page 2, it shows the projects that are on page 1 getting done, right?
No,
Okay, well,
No, they're
that's,
different projects.
those are different projects. So page
okay,
2
so
is,
that's why I want to stay on page 1, right? So, staying with page 1, if this matter passes, $34,935 is going into the 2% fund, okay? And even with that action, are you saying that only up to $34,935 of this menu on page 1 could get done?
No. So last year, when the board came in front of town council, you wanted to know what are the projects you would do if we funded this 2%, if we gave you the 2% in the 2% fund. So this year, being proactive, we're giving you a list of, these are the types of projects we would use the $34,000 for.
Okay, but it adds up to 130.
Correct. But we
So-
still, I know you want to stay with page 1, but we have unallocated money on page 2 that we would supplement to get all these done.
Okay, well then, let's jump to page 2, because I've got a column that says current balance. And what is that? That's not the current balance of the 2% account. What is it the balance of?
that's current, that's the balance currently in the 2% as of sometime last week.
Okay, but explain that to me, because the box that's 7 boxes down is a 0.
Understood, but that project is being wrapped up, and I just left it in there to show that,
So that's not the balance of the 2% account. It may be the balance is necessary to complete the project, but it's not the balance of the 2% account, right?
no, if I run my financial system, I would have, when I ran these numbers, it was 2.314 million.
No, you've got a column before that column. You're in the last column. I'm in the column that is headed by, it says current balance,
Okay,
right?
I'm sorry, yes.
That's a totally different column, right? You would agree?
Yes, so
Okay.
can I explain? That's the balance per project.
Okay.
The subtotal to the right is the total, so if you said, all my in-process projects total up to $983,780. All
Yeah,
my summer work's $101,000.
I got it. So when I look at current balance, my question was, current balance of what? That is what is necessary to complete the project? That is what's left in the project?
Oh, I'm sorry. I
Balance
understand
of
that.
what?
Balance, that's the remaining budget that we're going to utilize to complete the project.
Okay, so looking at line 1, is 56,357. That money is earmarked in the 2% account.
Correct.
Okay, so, that explains. Okay, and in the 2% account, there's the 983,000. Yes? Okay, so by adding the 34,000, that's not shown on page 2, right?
Correct, because it has not been approved to go into the 2%.
So then the swing set for Pond Hill and the Moran stage refinishing, why is that in a different area?
So those are projects that we can't do till the summer. So the first category, all the way down to the school signs, they're in some stage of process. We're working on them. We're basically completed them or paid for all the work. That's why you'd see a 0 in there. Okay. The next category are the summer items we're going to do in the summer. There's 2 of them there that total 101,000 for 21. The third category are items we need to bid before we could buy. Those total 157. We have our special ed contingency. We have our the projects that have been canceled or had residual balances. We might have thought a vehicle cost $26,000. It came in at $21,000, so there was $5,000 left over we have to reallocate. That's in the reallocate number, that 252. And then the unallocated from the COVID set aside that we had set aside several years ago is 171,000.
Okay, and I have to, I mean, I probably would have called one of you, I mean, we just got this document, so. I'm trying-
Okay, that's okay.
So
I understand.
So I guess the bottom line here, I'm trying to figure out what is in the 2%, because I know in the past there's been like a, we have to keep that in reserve sort of thing. Taking the current balance of the 2% account, subtracting what is appropriated for some project that hasn't been completed, adding in the 34,935, how much is in the 2% account?
I can't do that in my head.
Okay.
But I can with my phone.
Yeah, no
But it's basically, it's the 647 special ed contingency, 647,973. The 252,160 that needs to be reallocated, and the 171,841 that says unallocated. And I'm looking at not the current balance column, I'm looking at the one to the right of that, which is the subtotal of each category.
Okay, so it's close to $1 million, right? That would be left in the 2% account after this appropriation. Is that fair?
Correct.
That's
Before, yes, before or
It's
after.
just sitting there,
Correct.
right? So, sort of brings us to the beginning. If you've identified needs, you said you're not going to be able to get to all of this. Why is that the decision here if you've got $1 million and you need 130? Right? Is that, am I reading this correctly?
The 130 is areas that we could spend the money. That doesn't mean that we don't have other projects that we could do. We could bring a list that's $1 million of projects that need to be done in our schools.
Okay, but I heard identified need.
Identified
That's different
need.
from an identified want, right?
Let's look at the elementary schools. I mean, we're not here to talk about facilities tonight, but we have a facilities study coming that says every single elementary school needs to have the bathrooms redone. I mean, so that right there is more than what we're talking about, dollar-wise. So this is the identified areas when you look at page 1 of things that need to happen, like the basketball hoops at Highland. Those basketball hoops were put in when the school was K-5. It's now a K-2 school. Those kids can't even use the basketball hoops because they're so tall. This is to refurbish them and lower the loops so that the kids in the school can actually use them.
But if, I'm trying, the 2% account was set up so that we could, you know, you could carry money
Non-recurring.
over, do capital projects, that kind of stuff, so you didn't have to rush out and buy pencils, essentially, right? It was the claim. And then you're saying that we've got $1 million of stuff that we could do. I'm hearing that I got $1 million in the 2% account, so it begs the question, right?
We'd love to get it all done. There's
Okay.
supply issues. I mean, look at the list of, I get upset when I look at what's in progress, not from a standpoint that we're not doing our jobs, but some of these things just take a significant amount of time. We have vendors who've backed out of quotes that they've given us because they could no longer do the work for what they quoted it at. And you, everybody up here at the town council saw that when we came in front of the town council about the bonding for the security items. So, you know, these are items that even the softball fields and the DAG baseball field, I mean, those have taken a significant length of time to get the design work even done. So these are not, it's not as easy as send up a PO and put something out for a bid.
But those are in process. The ones
Those
that
are
you
in
just-
process.
You just identified. I'm looking at page 1. And what I'm hearing is that some of this stuff might not get done.
So it's not that it might not get done, it's just the time frame for which it takes place. So even if we moved all of these items off of here and we put them on the 2%, let's just say, it takes time to have all of them done. The process takes a while. And so they may still be, if we come back next year with a different dollar amount, you may see some of these on here, but they may be under the in process. So it's the timing of all of them, depending on where they are within the schools. It's the vendors, it's the bidding, it's hoping the vendors don't back out. It's, you know, they give us a price. What we're finding lately is they give us a price for one thing, and they come back, and then it doubles. And so it's just the time frame that it takes to get all the work done. It just is taking a lot longer.
Well, and that continues to get backed up, right?
Correct.
So the
And
list
so
gets longer
our
and
list
longer.
of Mark's, you know, Mark Deptula's items are long. And
'Cause,
so-
you know, I saw the Highland basketball courts on here, and I sort of, my eyes just got focused on that, because I was up there not too long ago, and I was like, these look like hell.
They do.
And, you know, those basketball courts are used not only by the kids at recess, but the neighborhood, right? So, and if you got $1 million, I mean, I'm in support what's before us. I just like to see some of, you know, more of this stuff get done, so. But thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Counselor Tata. Is your mic on?
Better?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I thought it always stayed on. So I know last year we had some discussions about the 2% fund was kind of growing, and some of us were concerned about that. It looks like from this that you're spending that down. Is that correct? So. Is that
Correct. Yes, that's okay. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. So if everything on this sheet gets done, on page 2, I'm looking, if everything on here, it looks like there's a lot in process, the total's almost $1 million. And then I know there's some of those items in the bottom that you like to keep for contingency. So it looks to me, if I do my math right in my head, you're going to be left with, even including it, if we give you the surplus, just over about $1 million left, correct? Okay. Okay, so that's drastic. So you're actually spending what we were kind of concerned, some of us were concerned about last year was kind of becoming a large savings account, so.
Correct. And I think last year we had talked about the COVID, the 1.6 million, I believe, in the COVID contingency piece. Correct.
Right, okay. So that's, I mean, I'm glad to see that, because obviously these projects seem like, you know, good ways to use that money. And the only other thing I just wanted to make 100% sure of, so your surplus for this year is $34,935, that's correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Right, that's the total surplus.
That's the unallocated, so there was a, it was that plus, there was 206,000 that we had earmarked to return back because of some impact on your ECS grant, based on our grants. So, you know, if you ran a financial report, it would show the 34,915 plus that 206, but we had reported that on our projections as a return to the town.
Okay. All right, great. So that, I mean, 34,000 out of your whole budget is, I mean, fractions of a percent, correct? That's very.
Like 0.002 or something.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That's all I have from the Counselor Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, second time. The plow truck, and I should know this, because I know Mr. Deptula does building, grounds and maintenance, right? Is that something that he would use? And
That's it, yes, that's an internal, I mean, yes, that's for our employees. We have some, you know, we have some plows that are, it's privatized plow companies, but we also have other plows we need to do, and I'm not quite sure of the breakdown, but I'm assuming we do the smaller parts. They get the big, you know, the big driveways done or the big parking lots, but we also need, we have several plow vehicles and we're trying to refresh them as they age out.
so this is written in the singular, plow truck for $42,000. So is it more than one?
No, it's one that we'd like to purchase. We have more than one currently, though.
Okay, and maybe a stupid question. Why isn't Public Works doing your snow removal? Is it just, that's just not the way it's ever been done, or?
Right.
Okay,
So we have outside plow companies that come in and help, and our own internal, our custodians and maintenance staff are there early in the morning.
cleaning and getting everything ready for the start of school. So it's kind of like a combination.
And it's one of those, because this is the way it's always been done, sort of thing.
We would love to entertain a conversation on shared services. I have a list of potential shared services. Maintenance on vehicles, like, we would love that conversation.
Yeah.
Mayor?
Yeah, Public Works is out doing the public highways and all of the parking lots for education. If we devoted Public Works attention to that, we're either not doing the public streets, or we would have to hire an enormous increase in employees in order to handle that.
And without such an increase, we wouldn't be able to open schools on time. So by having the private vendors, because obviously Public Works needs to do safety of the streets first. So with the capacity they have now, they wouldn't be able to do schools at the same time, and we would have even more snow days than what we do now.
Well, I guess ultimately it's coordination, right? So, I mean, I think Southington does it that way. And, you know, they address the schools first because they know it's got to happen early. And then I remember having this discussion, and I thought it was Southington, but anyway. I mean, and, you know, when we have a tremendous amount of snow, I think, you know, we go out and we get private people. So, or at least I know other towns do that. So, anyway, I guess I never realized it before.
Yeah, it's a combination of both, and I do have to say that our staff does a fabulous job out there in the morning. They were there at 4 o'clock in the morning, if not earlier, Monday morning, and on the phone with me at 4 a.m. coordinating. So they do a fabulous job, but they do it in collaboration with our outside vendors.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We have the mayor and the comptroller fighting to be heard. Work it out, you two, please.
I think it's difficult to compare municipalities. We have some 220 miles of local roads. That's not Route 68, that's not Route 150, that's not Route 5, that's not the interstates. 220 miles. So you figure the plow goes out and comes back. So that's twice that, and now you're doing that 3, 4, 5 times. You're talking about a lot of effort in opening the roads. Public Works, if you don't want to open that day and would be able to open the following day, then the parking lots and some of these things could be done. But it's an enormous task, and also the length of the storm. This last storm, just the other night, they were plowing early in the morning, and it would be right through the time that you're supposed to start. So they couldn't have been doing your parking lots or sidewalks or whatever. So, you know, there's a lot to the issue of plowing, and I do think you have to be careful about comparing communities, because every community is not the same size. We're 40 square miles. We're one of the larger ones. I don't know how large Southington is or anyone else, but that makes a big difference in terms of mileage.
Councilor Fishbein.
I guess the one difference, though, you'd have the same amount of plow drivers, but you wouldn't need 2 supervisors. So, you know, that's, anyway. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions or comments from the public? Did I miss anybody on the council? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Allenson?
Yes.
Carmody?
Yes.
Fishbein?
Yes.
Laffin?
Yes.
Marone?
Yes.
Tata?
Yes.
Testa?
Yes.
Zandri?
Yes.
Chairman Cervoni?
Yes. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. On to item 8, discussion and possible action on the ARPA program from the Law Department. All eyes are on you, Attorney Small.
Hey, I've got issues. I've got lots of issues. All right, so today you should have received from me some just initial information from the consultant of the number of applications received and the dollar amounts. Did you get that?
Yep.
Okay. So that's that. And so the consultant will start doing its work. In terms of the role of the consultant in, excuse me, and the committee regarding financial analysis, I think we need to just have a discussion to make sure everybody's on the same page. So the question really is the consultant responsible for doing the analysis of the financials, or is the committee expected to do that? Shouldn't have both doing the same thing, so I wanted to put that out for discussion. You know, at a minimum, the consultant would do the technical review to make sure that the applications are in compliance with the federal guidelines. But when you start to get into an analysis of the financials to determine the negative economic impact, the question is the committee going to get fully immersed in that process? And I think we just need a clarification as to what your expectations are on that. Some towns don't, they have the consultant do all of the work, and some, in some cases, the financials wouldn't go to the committee at all. I'm not sure, I don't think that's what you wanted, but we just really need to get that clarified so that the, both parties will know which way it's going. So that's one question. While you're thinking about that, I did have a conversation with the chairman of the committee, and there seems to be some interest in asking the nonprofits for additional financial information across the board. You know, we did reserve the right in our application process to ask for additional information. So, you know, my concern was that they wanted to do it ahead of time to all of them, asking for information before anybody's really reviewed the financials to see if any additional information is necessary. So that was my concern. Their goal in doing so is to prevent a delay in the process. But I just want to have a discussion about whether or not that's appropriate. You did specify in the application what financial records had to be provided. I can tell you my office spent a day and almost a half scanning in documents that were submitted hard copy, including financials of over 100 pages for a particular application. So there is a great deal of financial information that's been submitted. But the question of, one, I do think the committee has the right to ask for additional information. My view on it was that that would be when you're reviewing a particular application and you think something is deficient or there's some additional question. So that's one aspect of it. Another issue would be, my understanding is the mayor has provided you with a list of municipal projects. So, hopefully we can discuss the start date for the committee to commence its work, which leads into the public project question. We really didn't finalize our conversation about that. The motion for the public projects program was that the mayor and the council would agree on a list of projects, and then they would go to the committee. And I asked the question last time, and we really haven't answered it yet. So what is the committee is supposed to do with them if that's the process? What is your expectation? What's the criteria? What is the committee to be looking for if they are to be reviewing the public projects? I think we need to have that conversation because I did do a draft of an evaluation sheet, and I'm not sure that is really accurate. I'm not sure that that's how you want it to proceed. So I think we all need a better understanding of that. And then the other issue is you had placed caps on the different categories of monies that would be available to each group. One, I think I'm confused as to what it was. I thought it was 3.1 million change per group, but I'm not sure if that's correct or not. But if that is, if you with the cap, what is the committee to do with that? Are they to consider the cap? Are they not to consider the cap? Keep in mind they're making recommendations back to you, so for final approval. So are they supposed to stop at that? Are they supposed to make adjustments? We'll need a clarification of that. So that kind of covers the issues that I view as being on the table for thought, discussion, hopefully resolution, and so we can get moving.
Counselor Laffin.
Thank you, and thank you, Attorney Small, for breaking all that out and down. I'll quickly hit on all those topics for everybody to listen to. I wanted to add in, as I emailed everybody, that I received an email from a business that had run into accountant and health issues looking for an extension. Based on the responses I got, I don't feel that was overly popular, but I know that other counselors had brought up raising the possibility of offering a brief extension. Anyway, if others are interested, please stay and do so. They cited, in addition to health, just difficulties with some of the accountant stuff that was required. I also received communication over the weekend regarding a nonprofit. I did ask them to put together a formal request, just for the record. They did not apply because they felt, for the size of their nonprofit, the required accounting was too laborious, and their accountant was going to charge too much to make it worth the while. Let's go backwards. The cap, my understanding was that the committee would recommend funding within the limits they were given. I'm okay if we want to change that, but that was, I thought, what we agreed upon, where we settled. The committee regarding the public projects, just to state again, I think we should be doing that, not the committee. So I'll let the majority that voted for that explain how they think that should go, with the committee itself reviewing the public projects. Whether they request more financial information for a nonprofit, yes, of course. And whether they want to delay the review, I would completely defer to the committee on whether they start to review the ones they feel are complete, or whether they wait until they have everything, or whether they come to us whether they need a new deadline, new information. I think that we did that for the nonprofits, and that gets back to the business that wasn't, I recommended the business that had the issues with getting enough accounting information, that they supply what they had and supply the rest as they could, or as it came in with the explanation. I did not hear back on what they ultimately decided to do, but that kind of goes along with what the nonprofit situation is. And then the financial analysis of the consultant versus the committee. I understood, or my thoughts were from the beginning, that the consultants would determine whether people met qualifications, and then the committee would use the information to weigh and judge. That's it for me. Thanks.
Counselor Zandri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I have a few different things that I want to discuss, but I wanted to kind of move on one item first, and maybe I'll come back for the other one. So to kind of address Attorney Small's question about, we had the original allocations that we broke down, and at the time, that I was involved with this piece of the discussion, for me, it was to kind of have a framework there. It wasn't necessarily to limit any one bucket, but I wanted to have kind of some ideas of things in alignment. Now that we've gotten the information in against, the framework, we have 139 business applications. We've got 50 nonprofit applications. With the allocations that I remember, which was 3.25, and then the differential that was remaining was kind of put into the public projects bucket, because a tiny little portion of that was already leveraged by our current budget. That kind of sets up the framework. So what I would rather have us do is kind of extend back to the committee. Try not to work in that bucket. You're going to tailor yourself up to 3.25, and you're going to hit a ceiling. So, I kind of don't want that. I would rather have the committee working towards, hey, we've got, these different buckets of allocation, 139 and 50. figure out if they're all viable. If they're all viable, great. If they're not viable, then we weed those out. So with that, I'd like to make the following joint motion as a combination motion. I'd like to adjust the ARPA grant allocation for businesses from its current allocation upwards in total to a total of $3,440,135 by taking the additional funds from the parked allocation for town projects to meet the current total amount requested of the 139 business applications. And the second part of that motion is to adjust the ARPA grant allocation for nonprofits from its current allocation upwards to a total of $3,994,136.77 by taking the additional funds from the parked allocation for town projects to meet the current total amount requested of the 50 nonprofit applications.
Second. That was mine, not Carmody's.
Moved and seconded.
And I will email that to the clerk so she has it.
Counselor Fishbein.
So I'm just going to stay focused on the motion. I suppose that those numbers come from the aggregate as reported to this body as to the applications.
Yes, that's from the allocations that, the applications that came in, that email that we received today gave us those number of applications and the total amounts.
So what happens procedurally, because that's assuming that all of those applications are
approved.
Not even approved. I mean, approved is a moving target here, right? Because $1 is approved and 100% is approved too, right? So
That's just the maximum budget. That's just the maximum requested, understanding that there's probably going to be less approved. So he's, I mean, as I understand the motion, what he's saying is, we've been told that that's the maximum asked for each category, so he's requesting that the limits that you've previously requested go up to the maximum requested, understanding that once they're analyzed, it'll probably be somewhat less.
and those numbers presently are at 3.5, I think.
3.25 in each bucket.
So I guess by default, if the recommendations and approvals do not meet those items, the only other place for the residual to go is back to where we're taking it from, right?
Right.
So, okay, that clears that up. Thank you.
Counselor Tata.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the reason that we had the prior vote was because I think, you know, we discussed ad nauseum what we wanted to do with this money, and I think the compromise was that 50% would go to businesses and nonprofits, and the other 50% would go to municipal projects. And that was what we all voted on, and that's where we were. So to now come and change it, because now we have numbers in, the entire purpose of that original motion was so that we wanted to do that before we had these numbers, so that we couldn't, you know, we wouldn't be able to say, if these numbers came in and they blew through the entire 13.5 million, you know, we had already decided how we wanted to spend this money, and that we wanted 50% of it to go to municipal projects. So I am opposed to this. I'm a little frustrated that along this whole ARPA process, it seems like a lot of motions are undoing prior motions. I suppose procedurally that can take place, but I just think during this whole process has been frustrating to see that we make a motion, we vote on something, and then at the next meeting we have another vote to undo what we already voted on. So I am opposed to this motion. Thank you.
Counselor Allenson.
So my understanding of the original motion was that it was a placeholder because we said we don't know how much will come in. Essentially, we didn't want to earmark the entire 13 as if we were just going to allow all of it to go there, or at least that was everyone else's argument, it wasn't mine. But we did state that these were not hard and fast numbers. They were numbers that could be adjusted according to what came in if we saw it, considering that the numbers came in so closely to what we did allocate. I think it would be a shame to not raise the threshold to at least be able to entertain giving everybody what they've asked for, provided that they can provide the documentation and that they are approved by the committee that we've appointed. I think all this does is give the committee the ability to say, if all else fails, we don't have to then go through the work of deciding if we want to approve every single project, which I highly doubt that they will, but if they want to approve every single project, they don't have to then go through the work of percentage adjusting down or deciding who deserves more than who on what. I think that it's very reasonable to expect that the numbers, I think it was reasonable to expect that the numbers could have come in at 30 million, as some people proposed in the beginning. I also think that it's reasonable to adjust when we find out that we have the opportunity to do some really good things for a lot of people and do some town projects, and I believe that that is the spirit of compromise.
Councilor Zandri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to just add just a tiny little bit to that, and I understand Councilor Tada's opposition to this, and I can appreciate where she's coming from with it. I don't remember the exact number that we allocated from ARPA to the budget. I want to spitball it and say it was 300,000, but I don't exactly remember. We already pulled a little bit out on the municipal side, so by doing this little bit of massaging of another 884,000 to the businesses and the nonprofits, by the time the committee washes out the difference of who maybe doesn't meet all the criteria, maybe they don't get anything, it's probably going to come really close to the 50%. I mean, when I thought about making this motion, my mindset was, just like Councilor Allenson said, I didn't want the committee to sit there and go, great, we've approved everybody, but now we got to take everybody down 2% to make it fit the box, or worse, if they had some people that were coming in under the point system at 89 points and 88 points, that they were going to get shimmed out. I'd rather adjust these numbers upwards, even if we spent every dime, knowing that it would be another 884,000 to these two buckets, knowing that we already took about 300,000 or so into the budget. We're talking about a differential of 500,000. So I'm hopeful that there's enough support here to do this, because I think it would be a way to say, look, we're kind of reaching the end game of what we were hoping to do in the first place. Cover the businesses, cover the nonprofits, and do some municipal projects almost equally. So hopefully everybody has the ability to kind of accept that and would be able to support it. And at least I know, too, that the folks that don't are standing on their principles from before, and I appreciate that, too. Thank you very much.
Councilor Fishbein.
I don't know how I'm voting on this, okay? I'm going to start with that. I guess my concern is that are we then directing the committee that they cannot, in their recommendations, reduce any of the application wants?
So no, they can actually do whatever they want. What I didn't want to have them hamstrung on was, if they passed everybody and they were going to go over the amount, they were going to have to cut something. If we pass this, that removes it now. If they pass everybody and everything is perfect and everything's 100%, the bucket is full, they expend the entire bucket. If they get an application in and they decide, well, we're going to trim this by 10% just because of criteria or things, they have free ability to still reduce on their own, but I don't want them to be reduced because the well ran dry. That's what I'm trying to keep from happening here.
No, I understand, and I appreciate that, and as long as that flexibility is still there, because I'll tell you, when I've been involved in groups like this, I mean, you know how much money there is, and then you say, you know, we're gonna score all these, and, you know, let's just say it's 1 to 100, and you say, okay, everybody 90 and above gets the 100%, and then, you know, 80 to 90, you're gonna start to trim, and that's part of the give and take amongst the group. So I don't know that the group itself is constrained, but as long as the group can still do at least what I envisioned the group would do, I think I'm comfortable. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions or comments from the public? Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Ellenson,
Yes.
Carmody,
Yes.
Fishbein,
Yes.
Laffin,
Yes.
Marone. Tata,
No.
Testa,
Yes.
Zandri,
Yes.
Chairman Cervoni.
Yes, motion passes. How does that help you, Attorney Small?
Takes one off the list.
All right.
Okay, so do you want to talk about,
I just have some more items. It's gonna all come from her list anyway, so go ahead.
no, go ahead, no, if you're on a roll, go for it.
'Cause I did want to address, as Councilor Laffin did, the entirety of your list, at least from my perspective, so.
Well then, Councilor Fishbein, why don't you do that before Councilor Zandri's next motion?
Okay, thank you. So what I envision is that the committee does not have the ability to ask for more information. We've already heard a lot of people say, you're taking too long, you know, we got to get something done here. From my perspective, once the application has been vetted by the consultant and it's in the possession of the committee, then the committee should not be constrained to come to their conclusion on all the applications, from my perspective. I mean, because then potentially you end up dragging out, I mean, we want to get this done, right? So that's what I see. And then once the application is in the hands of the committee, you know, this is the criteria, score them. I mean, that's not that difficult. We've already dealt with, you know, they can reduce the grants and that kind of stuff. So the public project thing, I think I did vote for originally. I've thought about that. It doesn't make sense for the committee to have anything to do with the public projects from my perspective. It's sort of, well, it doesn't make sense. We'll just leave it at that. And then the financial analysis question. Should the consultant be doing the financial analysis or the committee? From my perspective, it's the consultant's responsibility to make sure that that application meets the four corners. Then it gets to the committee, and the committee does the analysis as part of their scoring. That's the way I see that, and that's all I had to say, so thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Does anybody else want to speak before Councilor Zandri's next motion? Councilor Zandri.
All right, so I don't know that I exactly have a motion for this, but I'll start it off as a question, so to Attorney Small. The business application evaluation form, you've given us the draft on this. Now, if I wanted to suggest changes to the scoring outline, do I need to make a motion to do that?
The business one, you've already done the business one.
Right.
You mean the public projects, or you want to go back to the business one?
I wanted to go back to the business one because of the additional questions that we're asking about who is supposed to be doing the scoring and who's going to, you know, look at the financials. I've looked over this evaluation criteria and I wanted to make some changes to it because I don't know that with the criteria the way that it's outlined, if it's going to be able to do the job that it needs to do. The one that I've got in front of me was from the email from, I want to say it was a couple of days ago, where the draft is from 10/3, so October 3. It basically outlines that there's a bucket of 60 points allocated, the evaluation criteria for that is the goals and expected outcomes are clearly described and are achievable, and it's demonstrated that the grant will assist the applicant in sustaining its viable business and it's not a temporary fix. And then there's 2 more 20-point buckets that outline the proposed budget is appropriate for the request and is supported by documentation. And the last one is the proposed timeline for completion is reasonable and the project can be completed within 12 months. So those, the more I look these over, the more I've got a concern that it doesn't do enough. So I wanted to know if I wanted to make some changes to this, should it come as a motion or should we just put it up as a discussion?
Well, the agenda item is broad, so, which I, requested. I may have to run upstairs and get I don't seem to have the scoring card for the business, but, you guys know your parliamentary procedure probably better than I do, but I don't think a discussion is fine from my perspective. But.
So, Mr. Chairman, should I make a motion? Can I start it off as a discussion up here? How would you like me to proceed?
Since you're asking me, my preference would be that you make a motion.
Okay. All right, so if I'm going to make a motion then, what I would like to propose is to change the elements as follows. So I'm basically what I'm going to end up doing is I'm taking that first evaluation criteria that's at 60 points. I'm actually going to fracture that and make it 2 different elements. And then I'm going to, so instead of there being 3 here, forget the required criteria because we're assuming that that's going to get done by the consultant. What I'm really talking about is the scoring element. So I'm going to basically fracture that first one and then tweak the other 2. So I would like to make a motion that we make changes to the evaluation criteria of the business application. Let me make sure I have this right. The business application evaluation form to read as follows. Element 1, the degree to which the COVID-19 pandemic created or contributed to the demonstrated and clearly described financial adversity that the business is experiencing, that evaluation criteria would be given 30 points. The second element would be the degree to which it is demonstrated that the applicant's proposed project will assist the business in long-term recovery from that adversity and is not a temporary fix, and we would allocate 40 points to that scoring element. The third element would be the degree to which the proposed budget for the project is appropriate and supported by documentation, 15 points, and the degree to which the proposed timeline for completion is reasonable and the project can be completed within 12 months, 15 points. That's the entire motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion on the council. Councilor Tata.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do agree that the scoring rubrics were flawed. I believe I voted no on all of them initially because I did see that they probably could have been improved upon. However, I don't think it's fair to edit them now because the applicants may have reviewed those before applying, and thus they may have submitted an application based on the scoring criteria. So to change them now would be like a teacher handing out a rubric for a project, and then after the students hand in the projects, the teacher says, well, that's not how I'm going to grade them anymore, we're going to change it. So while I do understand there's some flaws with these, and I didn't really like them from the beginning, I'm not supportive of this just because I don't think it's fair to the applicants to change it after their applications have been submitted. Thank you.
Councilor Fishbein.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I heard what the motion was, and I think that all of the, the first one, if I recall correctly, has to do with the severity of the impact upon the business. The second one has to do with, does the project address that severity? And then we have appropriateness and timeline. All of those things were in the original criteria, so I think that they're appropriate. The one thing, though, that I think the scoring should be in line with the rule and in line with the other documents that we've had. I heard the word adversity, and but I think in the rule and all of the guidance that we've dealt with, they've used the term hardship. That's what we've used. So I think it would be appropriate, and I'll offer perhaps, friendly amendment sort of situation. If we replace adversity with hardship, I think that would bring that in line with the rule and the applications.
Well, let me kind of outline where the spirit of what I'm trying to do is, and I'm open to suggestions. I mean, here's, in a nutshell, I think almost anybody could prove hardship during COVID, and that's what my concern is. If they've recovered from it, I want the committee to be able to score them lesser as having a need. I'm going to use my own example to make this simple. This is where my mindset is coming from with this. We talk about, the system not being fair. Warren Buffett and Bill Gates can claim Social Security. They're billionaires, but they can actually go out and claim it when they're of retirement age because they've put into the system. Fair or not, they're following the rules. People get upset when these trillion-dollar corporations shell off all their money overseas. They're not doing anything illegal. They're following all of these loopholes that are open. What I'm trying to do with this is tighten up loopholes. My family's business before we sold it was definitely impacted by COVID-19 shutting down the banquet facility. I couldn't show hardship during that time. The next year, when we converted the facility into storage, we were maxed out the entire year. We made all that money back. And I'm only using my example so that I'm not picking on any other businesses. There are absolutely businesses, and I've said this before, hair salons, nail places, they couldn't see customers no matter what. I could, if my business was still open, we hadn't sold it, I could apply for this grant and get it based on the fact that I can show hardship during the period. And afterwards, I had already recovered. I think by tightening this up and making the criteria more defined for the committee, they can take a look at who suffered, who's still suffering, and who will get the most miles out of being supported through these funds going forward. That's really what I would like to see us do, not allow for loopholes if we can set them up that way. I think that allows for the committee to have the best success, and I think that it allows for the most people that genuinely need help getting it by having these funds be available to them. Because anybody that follows the exact set of rules can get the money.
So I don't disagree, but from my perspective, adversity is something much lesser than hardship, right? So
It really should be negative economic impact if you want to follow the rule.
we've asked the applicants to define subjectively the hardship that has affected them, right? So why wouldn't we have the committee then, and I wrote down, the committee is proposed to look at the degree of, I forgot the word that Jason used, the degree of adversity. I'm saying, adversity could be that any level of pushback, but we are looking to address hardship, and that's what we've asked the applicants to. So,
Well, actually, we use the words negative impact and negative economic impact. That's what the.
And this says financial. The motion was financial adversity. So,
yeah, once again, we're looking at the degree, though, also. So it's, there's some sort of scale somewhere as far as what it is. So that's the one thing that jumped out at me. Other than that, I'm supportive of having more criteria for the committee to look at, different shades of the rainbow. So, understood. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Marone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I have to say, I agree with Councilor Tata. I'm not sure how it now, we put out the 60-day period, it's done, the applications are in, people have done their homework, so I don't know how you then create criteria now based on, to go retroactively to the applications that have already been filled out. I think we sort of agreed on language, and even if the language is flawed, then you leave it up to the interpretation of the committee and you move on from there. So I'm comfortable with the language the way it was, what we agreed upon before we entered the float of the 60-day, waiting period and so on. So I think we should stop talking about this and just move on and let the committee do their work and go from there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Questions or comments from the public? Mr. Brudzinski.
Mike Brodinski, 45 Valley View Drive, Chair of the ARPA Committee. I want to address a couple of things. There is a distinction, common sense distinction, between negative economic impact and adversity or hardship. I'll get to that in a minute. But a very profitable business before the pandemic, who stays profitable during the pandemic and remains profitable after the pandemic, could very easily have a negative economic impact just because they have a hit to their revenues, but it's a negative economic impact, but it's not a hardship or adversity, and we'll get to that in a minute. So to say that they're equivalent concepts, I think is not consistent with common sense. A comment was made that the rules, the regulations, ARPA itself refers to negative economic impact. I think is more untrue than true in this sense. And I got to put some stuff down to reach for some paperwork I have here. I've been carrying this around for like 9 months, so this has sort of been in my file. But we start with the regulation, which says, in part, that businesses that had a negative economic impact can get assistance from the town, and more specifically, I'm going to read here, assistance to small businesses, including programs, services, or capital expenditures that respond to negative economic impacts of the COVID-19 public health emergency, including, and here comes the magic language, including loans or grants to mitigate financial hardship. So if you got a grant program, you've got to have hardship or the functional equivalent, and right now I don't want to split the hair between adversity and hardship. But the regulation says, it's quite clear, and you just can't walk away from it. I mean, it says, again, including loans or grants to mitigate financial hardship. Well, that's just the regulation. The interim rule and the final rule, which helps apply the regulation, says essentially the same thing, or it repeats it. And the final rule talks about loans or grants. That's what we're doing. It's a grant to mitigate financial hardship. Our own application, the town of Wallingford's own application for a while, said that it was vital to show hardship in your application. At some point, I think it was in the late spring, that was stripped out for reasons I'm not really sure. The Economic Development Commission has been circulating flyers that refer to economic hardship, and that the businesses are supposed to show economic hardship, so they understood it that way. The consultant, hold on. Got to leave the microphone for a second.
just want to let you know, if Mr. O'Connell has a stopwatch going, you're in trouble.
I know. I know. The consultant has a button on the town's website, frequently asked questions, and there is a question. A project or program, can you please give an example of what the project/program would be like? And the answer, a project or program is what ARPA calls any award of ARPA funds to an entity. I don't know what that. In the case of small business assistance, this is the arena we're in right now. This is the ballpark we're in. In the case of small business assistance, a program or project can be a small business requesting funds to mitigate a financial hardship resulting from the pandemic or so on. And then an example, consultant says, an example of a business request to mitigate a financial hardship. So you can't walk away from hardship or adversity, or you just can't walk away and say, no, it's really negative economic impact, which would mean rich guys get richer. But you read the final rule, you read the interim rule, and you read the context. And an essential concept, which Wallingford has never addressed, is that the pandemic has hurt the small guy. And this is money to help them bounce back. But if they don't need help to bounce back, they haven't suffered adversity or hardship. They're cruising along. So this is not the first time I've sort of mentioned this concept in public, but it is the first time I brought out the rule, the interim rule, the final rule, the regulation, what our own application said for a while, what the consultant says. I mean, I think that's where we are. And one of the, I need the motion to be read back again because in the audience we got to follow it. But to address some of, I think what Councilor Marone said, I mean, that's an important thought. I get what Joe is saying. Over the months, I tried to figure out what the council wanted the committee to do and why. And what I gathered was that you wanted the committee to sort of score or rank applications according to worthiness or merit, and it's comparative process. One application is good, and then you see another one that's better, and so it becomes sort of, you got to look at the whole thing and sort of figure out what the ranking is. And I don't know if that's what you want. I think maybe a meeting or two ago, Councilor Marone sort of suggested that. We want a ranking, we want a list, we want a comparison of the most worthy to the least worthy, the most meritorious to the least meritorious, and fill in the blanks in between. Before we knew the new numbers, before Councilor Zandri's motion got passed, this would have been more complicated, and it's a little simpler now, but I think your intent is still the same. Give us a list, a ranking, a grouping. The current application, the current scoring criteria won't give you that. Not going to give you that. So if you stay with the current criteria, you're going to be frustrated, we're going to be frustrated that you're frustrated, and so on and so forth, because the current criteria doesn't reach the issue of merit, worthiness, hardship, any of that stuff. What does it reach? Let's look at the exact language one second. Currently says 60 points, 60 out of 100. The purpose, goals, and expected outcomes are clearly described and achievable. So 60 points go to the rhetorical skills of the grant writer. Is paragraphing good, punctuation good, is it clear? Not whether it's a good project or a weak project, not whether it has merit or lacks merit, it's whether it's clear. So hypothetically, you could have a stinky project, but if you clearly describe the stinky project, you get a lot of points. And the goals are achievable, okay. And it's demonstrated that the grant will assist the applicant in sustaining its viable business. Probably any sort of money would make an assist on that. But if you're looking for merit, it's the accuracy of the description, or it's the detail of the description. So can you jump into a future committee meeting where we're discussing whether something is accurately described, and let's say Councilor Fishbein is on the committee, he says, well, this is a pretty good description, it's pretty clear, but someone else says, but this one is better, it's 750 words. And someone else says, oh, this one is even better, it's 800 words and illustrated. Is that what we're debating? I don't think so. But that's what the criteria directs us to, and then the other two have to do with, budget and timelines, which are sort of easy to, it's almost clerical to decide those. In a complicated application worth a lot more money, it may be more involved. This promises to be simple, but so I think probably, given the EDC's promotion of this and the hardship issue, I think businesses understand. I'd be shocked if they don't, that this has got to be some adversity or hardship connected. But maybe they don't. But when I leave the microphone, if you could, Councilor Sandry, just read that one more time, slowly. It's okay. I think I'm done. Thank you.
We have half the committee here, and they all want to speak. Mr. Gross, your name and address for the record, please.
Bob Gross, Long Hill Road. I'm not speaking as a committee member. I'm speaking as a member of the public. I have to agree.
How do we tell the difference?
Well, you can by the question, then but it's okay. I'm saying. Yeah, to change the questions midstream is tough because I know people who filled out the application and they went off the application, what the questions were. So to change it now would be kind of unfair to some of them.
Apparently the microphone's not picking you up.
That's surprising. For the committee, I'm talking from the committee, not to see the financials. For one, 501c3s for the most part do 990s. All their financials are online, so I think everything they pass in should be able to be seen. And if you want to see financial hardship, which is Chairman Burdinsky's point, you need to see their financials to see if they qualify that way. Otherwise, if they've had $1 million profit, $900,000 profit, whatever, per year, and they said they had a hardship because they lost their revenue was $100,000 less, but their expenses might have been $100,000 less. So you need to see those to see whether there was a real hardship, because you want everybody who really needs this money get the money. Because I don't know how you're doing it. I don't know whether you're extending it. I don't know what you're doing in those things. And so those are the points on that. And I had my other question, but it's on the other piece of paper and I forgot it. Thank you.
Mr. Glidden, another member of the committee.
Mike Glidden, Pomeroy Avenue. Also, as a member of the committee, too, we need to see the financials in order to actually assess the financial impact. So please make sure that that is included, what's sent to us. We were of understanding that the consultant was going to start off by taking in the applications, then saying, did they demonstrate or they meet the 4 pillars, and then it would come to us where a deeper review would occur, where we would do the physical scoring. If we don't see those financials, we cannot score those applications based on the criteria. And I agree with Joe and Christina with your comments about changing the rules midstream, because I've heard too, as a private citizen, individuals who accessed all of our documents online and prepared their applications based on what was available. So it is a little unfair to those applicants that if we change those criteria midstream, so, thank you.
Ma'am. Name and address for the record, please.
Christy Durr, 12 Penny Lane. As a Wallingford resident, local business owner, and actually run a 501c within Wallingford, I do have to agree with Councilor Marone and Councilor Tata. At this point, while I do, Jason, very much, Councilor Zandri, excuse me, very much appreciate the point that you're making. I think at this point in the game, to change the scoring system for both businesses and charitable organizations, it just doesn't make sense. It's not fair. Let's just move forward with the process, please. Thank you.
You can speak, Mr. Brzezinski, after Attorney Small.
No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. I'm not suggesting that they not see the financials. I just putting out the discussion as to where the roles are. So I just, in case somebody thought that I was suggesting that, I just want to clear that up. I'm not suggesting that. And I think that the description that Mike gave about grants to mitigate financial hardship, I do believe that's all of our discussions have ever been. I mean, I don't think there's anything new about that. I think that's what we've talked about all along. So I'm not sure, I think we're all in agreement that that's essentially what's being done. Whether something needs to be modified or not, I'm not sure, but, so I just wanted to make that point. I had another one, but I don't remember it, so.
It's in the room. You're not the only one. All right, Mr. Brzezinski.
I didn't address the documentation issue because I thought this was just a motion on the criteria. I can wait on that, but others did, so.
You might as well. You're standing there.
Right from the beginning, I think a lot of us were members of the public and applicants and everything else. I think we had the understanding that the consultant would make a first pass at the applications to see if there are any technical violations of ARPA, or a use was something illegal, or the applications were incomplete, or something like that. And after that, through their filter, they would send everything down to the committee. And the understanding also was that they would send all the materials filed to the committees, and that we would do whatever work we deem necessary, whether that's financial analysis or not. You know, it just depends on the application and the issue that comes up. But this understanding that we would get all the financials and all the backup was memorialized in an email exchange between the law department, me, and the consultant. And it was quite clear back in October that the consultant would release to us all the materials filed for our use. And so I was shocked that now maybe this is being walked back. I mean, that was the agreement, that was the understanding. You know, we based some discussion at our meetings on that assumption, on that promise, that we would get all this information and that we would spend a couple of weeks, basically over the Christmas break, until our first meeting in January, you know, like 3 weeks, reviewing all of this stuff so we could get our arms around the issues and the challenges, and then we would know how to go forward so that our first scheduled meeting would be able to hit the ground running. And so now there's a suggestion, no, you misunderstood. But we didn't, because there's a clear, explicit, written understanding we'd get it. And I think any other system just isn't going to work. Look, the more information we have, the better decision we can make. We have 10 different people on the committee with different perspectives, different levels of curiosity or interest or insight. It seems to me, if any, just as a chairman and trying to move things forward, especially with a supermajority requirement, if any one committee person has an interest in knowing more, I support that. That's why there's 10 people. So the idea, I think, is provide us with all the information already filed. I can't see a reason why not. It hasn't been expressed. Let me just finish. I can't see a reason why not. As for, other documentation with respect to the nonprofits, I think that's another item later on in the night, but that's my, thank you. Janice?
You should probably hang around, Mike. I did not say that. I'm not saying that.
Okay.
You raised the issue as to what was the division of labor between you and the consultant. And I said, where's the line? I don't know. That's why I put it on as part of this agenda, to get clarification. Is everybody on the same page? I never said, I didn't intend to say, that the committee shouldn't have the information. But whether or not the consultant would do some type of the financial analysis, I was like, where's the line? I don't know where the line. You raised the issue. So that's why it's here on the agenda. And now I'm trying to take that information away from you. I'm not taking that information away from the committee. I just want to make sure that everybody's on the same page as to who's doing what. That's all.
Can we continue that conversation, who's doing what, or?
I'm going to say you're standing there just one more time.
Just one more time, all right. I don't know what financial analysis means, and if there's a sort of a walkthrough as to what that means, because that was a phrase you used. I heard that the consultant was doing financial analysis for the first time like 4 days ago or 5 days ago. It kind of surprised me as to why they thought they were doing that. I mean, I don't think they just made it up, but that's okay. If they're not doing it, that's good. And if we're getting all the materials, as soon as possible, that's good. As far as the request for additional information, I'm gonna sit down on that and pop up later again, and when that comes up.
Okay. I don't see any more hands. I bring it back to the council. Councilor Allenson.
I'm actually good. I was just going to highlight the same things that Attorney Small said.
Councilor Zandri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just kind of want to close with, one comment. One of the reasons why I decided to take a swing at the business criteria, and I do want to kind of outline that this motion that I've made does not affect the nonprofits application evaluation. It is just the business one. And the reason I kind of broke down that first box into two separate elements is, and reworded it the way that I did, is because I didn't want to have a situation where somebody qualified to get these funds and they really didn't need it. I go back to the Social Security example. Even though you worked, you paid into the system, you're a billionaire, you really don't need to collect it. I would much rather have it be a business that was impacted. The pandemic created or contributed to a clearly described financial adversity that the business is experiencing. So I'll go back to the example of the hair salons. They couldn't see anybody during the pandemic. Then when they came back, they couldn't even have two people in the shop at the same time. Even today, especially like right now, this time of year where flu is starting to come back up, and you get a little bit of a resurgence of COVID, and I'm picking on the hair salons because they're a great example, the only reason I'm using them. They're gonna have their customers now, they're gonna say, listen, I might wait a little bit to get my hair done or my nails done, so I used to come every 8 weeks, I'm gonna come every 12. They are still being impacted by what's going on. The change in this criteria bolsters their argument and removes an argument from someone that says, here are my financials, I made less money, I can prove it, I qualify on that line. The other element is the project will assist that same impacted business in the long-term recovery from that adversity, and it's not a temporary fix. The salon might get more space if they could afford it through some sort of an expansion or some sort of partitioning in their salon to make more customers feel comfortable to coming inbound. I could still put a project together because I was impacted before to say, look, I lost some business. I'd like to recover it with this big ad and giveaway program, outline what I'm going to do, and I would match the criteria. All I want to do is try to, again, close up any potential loopholes. And I'm comfortable if this doesn't pass because people feel it's unfair to change the rules after the applications are in. That's a valid argument. I'm not going to take that away. I would rather be wrong on that aspect than being right on the aspect of we left the gaping loophole open when we might have still had time to close it or narrow it so less people get through that maybe really kind of sort of don't need it, when I definitely know there are people that still do. And that was part and parcel to why I added the original motion from earlier to expand those ceilings, because I don't want anybody to not get what they really need to try to finish recovering. And that's the only reason I made this set of motions here for the second element. But I appreciate everybody's time and attention on this. I know it's not an easy ask for us to look at this and say, hey, we're in the 11th hour, let's consider making an adjustment. So I appreciate the opportunity. So thank you very much.
Counselor Fishbein.
So I still don't understand how the criteria as submitted in the motion differs from the underlying. I still think it is all the parts. But I'm looking at the PowerPoint presentation that our consultant put together for the public to review in anticipation of the applications, of course. And I don't see any portion of this that says applications will be scored based upon the following criteria. So I'm trying to figure out, you know, I understand the bait and switch. I understand that argument has been put forth. I don't know that the underlying facts are there to support it, because I still think it's the same criteria. But where was this representation, other than our meetings, other than the documents that we approved, to the general public who are the applicants? Where was it represented to them, the scoring criteria? And I don't know where that question goes. Janice, do you know?
I want to say that it was at the end of the application, but sitting here at this moment, I'm not 100% sure of that, because I think the evaluation criterias were actually, I thought some of it was approved or modified after the applications were put on there.
Yeah, I thought we played with it after the application portal was open.
So. I believe we did. That's my
So,
recollection.
And once I'm going through the PowerPoint, it's, I don't know how many pages, it's multiple pages. Page by page, I don't see that as any part of what was presented to the public. So, I don't know, I guess I can be convinced, but I don't see how, and I haven't heard how that criteria is presented in the motion is, and, now that Councilor Zandri has emailed it to us, the first item is the degree to which the COVID-19 pandemic created or contributed to the demonstrated and clearly described financial adversity that the business is experiencing. So we asked them to describe how they were financially negatively impacted by the pandemic. Same thing that is in the first one of the motion. The next one is the degree to which it is demonstrated that the applicant's project will assist the business in long-term recovery from that adversity and is not a temporary fix. So you've identified a problem in number one. We asked them to do that. We asked them in the application to say, okay, what is your project and how will it address the problem? So that's already there. And then we get to number three, the degree to which the proposed budget for the project is appropriate and supported by documentation. We asked them for the same information. We asked them shovel ready, what's your documentation, that kind of stuff. And then the fourth one is the degree to which the proposed timeline for completion is reasonable. The project can be completed within 12 months. So that's exactly what the criteria that we gave them in the application. So I'm willing to be educated here. If somebody could please describe to me how we're asking for different information, it would perhaps be helpful in my determination. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
It's my opinion, and it's only my opinion, that the changes that I've made are going to make it so that the committee's got more breathing room and scoring potential to rank all the applications that came in. You're right, the last two elements are almost exactly the same because there's not much to do with either of those. What I'm trying to outline with breaking up the first element there into those two parts and assigning it a total of 30 and 40 points, respectively, is the fact that you have to be able to show that you were affected by this financial adversity, and you still are today. Every business was impacted. So there were very few businesses that came out of the initial pandemic run that made more money. Their revenue streams were definitely changed. Now, a lot of them made more money on the books because they either got PPP money and were paying salaries out of that, expenses were lesser, so even though they brought in less revenue, they actually turned a bigger profit. There were pizza places that I know of that used to have the entire full-service restaurant. They closed it down to all takeout. They weren't using any of that restaurant area. Their revenues dropped, which I could show. If I was a pizza place, I could show my revenues dropped, and that's a financial impact. But my end result was I made the same amount of money with less staff, less overhead, but I would still qualify for this money. I just feel personally after looking at this, and like a lot of us have said, we've talked about this a lot, and so some of it starts to get blurry as you look at it long enough. I looked at it, and this little piece came into focus for me, and I felt like it was too broad. It made it for the possibility of too many people asking for something that maybe they really didn't need anymore. And what I really wanted to do here was to give the committee a little bit broader scope to be able to set that scoring up to say, but you're recovered. Some of these elements still play. You do get some points still, but you're not impacted anymore. So we're going to reduce those points.
So the current scoring, just refresh my, because I don't have it in backup, and you referenced the 10-3 email. I couldn't find that one, but if we set the 60 points aside, we're going to come back to that, though. That's question number one. The other 40 points are the same thing as in number 3 and 4 of your motion. Is that fair?
Not really. What it is it's setting up a tiered structure for that. Think of the 60-pointer, which reads, the purpose, goals, and expected outcomes are clearly described and are achievable, and it's demonstrated that the grant will assist the applicant in sustaining its viable business and it's not a temporary fix. So again, I use the example of the former family business that I ran. I could get 60 points right there, even though I'm recovered. I've got expected business outcome and describe what I'm going to do to change my business outside of losing the rental and the banquet hall facility area. And I should qualify for this money to help make that change, even though I didn't need the money for that change. So by breaking that tier apart, it's not even on the onus of the applicant anymore. It's really the onus on the committee to say, do they still deserve the entire 70 points, the 30 and the 40? This 60 is lumped together. The way that I did it was break that apart mainly into those two segments. They might get the whole 30 and part of the 40. They may get part of the 30 and all of the 40, or part and part of both.
Would you agree under the current standard that the committee could score an application at 1 to 60?
Sure they could.
So the intent of the motion is to cut that in half, increase the points to 70 essentially, but allow a 1 to 30 or a 1 to 40.
Right, it gives them two, if they're looking at this one line of 60 here and saying they fit most of the criteria, there's something there that doesn't fit so well, but I'll give them 50 points, and however the committee might discuss and come to a number. But with two buckets like that, it gives them flexibility to move them up or down based on whatever arguments from each subsection.
Understood. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I see no other hands, and therefore I'm going to ask you to call the roll, please.
May we have this motion emailed to us, please?
I did. I sent it to the town clerk.
Allenson?
I like this, but not the timeliness of it, so no.
Carmody?
Yes.
Fishbein?
Yes.
Laffin?
Yes.
Marone? Tata?
No.
Testa?
Yes.
Zandri?
Yes.
Chairman Cervoni?
Yes, motion passes. Can we just address the fact that nobody's holding back financial information from the committee? That everything that's going to be submitted is going to be allowed for them to review?
Correct.
Okay. So I think that checks something on the list. And I think the last thing to address is whether or not the council expects the committee to review public projects, or we'll leave that under our purview.
We have the public projects. We also have, is the committee now free to move forward? Or not? Or does the prohibition that you passed recently still in place?
Well,
do you have another motion?
No. I thought we were soliciting input from that question.
Okay.
I feel comfortable in saying that, even though there's no formal, applications in, we've got a laundry list now, right? So it kind of met with at least, in my opinion, at least initial criteria. We know what all the different departments and the town might want to apply for. So to me, I would like to release the applications, because I feel like the elements are all lined up. Even though we maybe don't have formal applications in, we've got an outline, and we can work between the mayor's office, the council, and the committee with maybe getting some of those in formally. That's just my thought process on it.
Is that maybe a motion to rescind the hold that we placed on the committee?
I could make it a motion. I'd like to make a motion to rescind the hold on the application process based on the fact that we did receive public projects.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Councilor Testa, I understand you want to speak.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
First of all, I want to understand this motion. You say release a hold. Does that mean simply to allow the committee to go ahead with their reviews of the applications they have now?
Yes, at the last meeting, or the meeting prior, we had, who can keep track anymore? The council had voted to have the committee take no action on applications until after the town's public projects were submitted.
Right, but I just want clarification. Submitted to whom?
Well, they've been submitted to the council. We all received an email today with the list.
No, I got that. Okay, I just want to make sure we're on the same page. I have no problem with this motion. I'm in favor of it. And if necessary, I'm going to follow it up with one that we reverse ourselves and the original decision to even have the committee involved at all in the projects.
That can be next.
What's that?
That can be next.
Well, right. So while I'm speaking on this, I just want to clear. I think the committee should go ahead and the whole idea of the whole concept of the public projects should now be something that the council and the mayor get together and start working on ourselves. But I'll let this motion go through, and then I'll be back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you all set, Councilor Testa?
I am. Thank you.
Councilor Marone?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So the prior motion, if I remember correctly, though, was that as soon as that the hold was until such time as we released the list of projects, which we've received, so then isn't this motion out of order?
Amen.
I don't know that it's out of order. It's potentially moot since we have the list. So, okay.
We just want to make sure that that it's accepted that way, that's all, just for clarification.
Okay. Mr. Brudzinski, you're not standing at the mic, but you're standing.
I didn't want this precious moment to pass.
Clearly.
Yeah, you're right. We therefore need some instruction or writing from somebody that we're to proceed.
You know what? I'll take that on.
Okay, thank you.
In that case, if the agreement is that the motion is moot because of the fact that the council has received the list of public projects, Councilor Zandri, would you withdraw your motion?
I'll withdraw it as long as we give them the okay, because I do want to move forward.
I'm going to do that.
Awesome. I'll withdraw.
Councilor Laffin, I think you have to withdraw the second.
Yes.
Okay. So the last item is, what are we doing about public projects? And the question becomes, is the council going to put that on the committee's shoulders, or is the council going to leave it between the council and the mayor? Councilor Fishbein.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we not have the committee have anything to do with the public projects. So moved.
Second.
Second. Moved and seconded with an echo. Discussion on the motion, Councilor Marone.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Let me preface my comments by saying that I love each and every member of this town council. That being said, government can fiddle-faddle like no one else on earth, right? And so what's going to happen is 6 months from now, a year from now, we're going to be sitting in this same spot trying to debate whether we think that the fire truck is better or worse than the basketball court at Community Lake. And so I don't mean this as an affront to the rest of my fellow councilors, but I just don't think that this body can get this done in any sort of a reasonable period of time. And so I like the idea of having a third-party people from the community that we sort of trust to make the decision as to the ARPA money, to at least give us their feedback as to some sort of a potential ranking of where they see these items going. So I am remiss to remove this, because I think we're going to be 6 months to a year from now, we're going to be in exactly the same spot we're in right now, where we're trying to rework the things that we've already agreed to. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Fishbein.
I share the cynicism. However, I don't think, I appreciate the level of cooperation that I have recently seen. At some point, this body is going to be dealing with recommendations of the committee. It's going to happen in the spring, maybe before that. And at that time, I think we'll get a sense of where we are, and we have the ability to make motions similar to the one that we did that got us to the cooperation, I suppose, at that point. But to put another layer on top of a layer, I don't think is being productive here. So I think we go forward right now with a sense of cooperation, and hopefully we end up doing the best thing for the general public under the rules that the federal government gave us. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Testa.
Thank you. I made this point before. I'll make it again now. I think we made a mistake when we first made a decision to involve the committee in the public projects. I said then that it's an abrogation of our responsibilities. And if we, with all due respect to Councilor Marone's point, if we can't get this done, then we're in the wrong job. This is what we're supposed to be doing. Secondly, I also don't like the idea of limiting the consideration of public projects to a list prepared by the mayor. And I've been saying all along since we started with this that we should be involved in that, and it should be something we should be doing in conjunction with the mayor. So I like where we are right now. Let the committee go forward and do what we actually proposed for them to do from the beginning. And now let us get to work on talking about what we might do from a municipal standpoint. And I believe strongly that that would necessitate special, at least one or more special meetings devoted specifically to just that. Talking about what we might want to do on all these different projects and prioritizing. It's something we can do, something we should do, and I feel very strongly about that. So I'm glad the motion's been made, and I hope we will vote to get things back to where they should have been from the beginning. Thank you.
I don't see any other hands on the council. Anyone in the public care to comment? There being none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Allenson?
Yes.
Carmody?
No.
Fishbein?
Yes.
Laffin?
Yes.
Marone?
No.
Tata?
Yes.
Testa?
Yes.
Zandri?
Yes.
Chairman Cervoni?
Yes, motion passes. Are we all set with our ARPA issues for tonight?
I think my list is done, and we've accomplished so much. Thank you.
All right, running away from ARPA and on to public parks. We're on to item 10. Councilor Fishbein, this is your item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see Mr. Michaels coming to the microphone. So when we met, I don't know, I think it was September or something like that, and we heard about some perceived conditions in our parks, what we talked about was something different than the list. So I don't know, and I don't know where the disconnect was, but on the agenda, I think the agenda properly sets out what we had talked about, is things that need to be addressed, things that are wanted by you in our parks as the Director of Parks and Recreation, and those that are currently planned for our town parks, for which we already have the equipment materials, however, are waiting for installation, improvement, repair by the Department of Public Works. So an important part of this, for me at least, was vision, right? What is your vision? Because, you know, the list that I got for the agenda item appears, and maybe that's the vision, and I just want to give you the opportunity.
Sure.
To, like, bring what we currently have up to a standard, right? Is that the vision?
It's not the full vision. I have ideas of things that I want to pursue, but to put that with a dollar figure right now, there are things that have to get done first, maintenance-wise, before I think we need to proceed with anything as far as my ideas. So my vision, this is all maintenance right here. So these are things that we need to address based on what our visit was when we did that park audit back in October. I also have submitted my request for ARPA funding for what is part of my vision of things that we need to take care of in our parks. I think I've stated before, we're at the life expectancy of all of our sport courts here in town. And as you guys have received the town department's ARPA funding or projects requests, you can see that there are a lot of sport courts that I had submitted for funding to be redone. Notably Community Lake, which we need 2 new tennis courts, brand new basketball court, Pragma Park, which gets a heavily used basketball court, that basketball court is in need of repair. Community pool, which, you know, we're sitting there still looking at a vacant facility that could be a prime park destination for our residents. And the camera system, you know, to upgrade the security at Doolittle Park. You know, are there a lot of other things that I would look into doing? Absolutely. I mean, that there's a full vision. But I also have a new commission as well that I want to bounce some ideas off of and maybe utilize them to see what their ideas are.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the commission, because I'm very frustrated that a newly appointed commission that comes in on the heels of at least allegations of severe problems decides to meet quarterly instead of monthly at its very first meeting. And I don't know how that comes to be, but I'm troubled by that. Do you know? I mean, how does a body that's never met as a group before to talk about the parks decide that instead of meeting 12 times per year, it's going to meet 4 times per year? Or 3 times?
We had discussed that with the previous commission and then reduced the meetings to actually 10. So this past year, there was only 10 in the calendar year. And discussion was brought up amongst the new commissioners about a meeting schedule. And many on the new commission thought that meeting monthly was kind of tedious. You know, there's not a lot that goes on in between each meeting from month to month to come back and really report on. So similar to other commissions that are here in town, Health Commission, to name one, they meet on a quarterly basis. And we felt that for the Rec Commission, that was an ideal situation with the new group involved.
Who's we?
Myself and the commission.
Okay. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And I got to tell you, you know, I appoint people to commissions, boards. I mean, I just put somebody on the Corrections Commission. We had a hearing yesterday on that. One of the questions that always gets asked, how many times does the group meet? Before somebody agrees to be on that board, it's a natural question. So now you would assume that these individuals going into this would think that they were meeting monthly or 10 times. If that was too much of a hardship, you'd think that they would have said, I can't do that. I don't have the time for that. So the whole, there's something weird there. But anyway, I mean, we have a commission that's in the charter that's only going to meet 4 times a year instead of 10 or 12. But I looked back at prior, like last budget, when I got the list from the ARPA, and I didn't see these things on there. Is there, you know, usually during the budget process, departments come to us, this is what we think we need, or this is what we want. And I didn't see any of these. I mean, obviously the community pool thing's a different, it's an anomaly, but like the pregnant park situation. Is there a reason why that wasn't on the previous requests?
So in the budget for this year, we have the 2 basketball courts to be done at Doolittle. So we were going to take care of those 2 in this budget year, and the next budget year, we're going to move on to the next park to take care of the next sport court. With the funds available and the ability to apply to get funds for whatever projects, I thought it was a prime opportunity to, instead of wait till next budget year to do Community Lake or Pragman Park, we can use some ARPA funding to take care of those projects.
What's the situation at Wallace Park with the emergency tape?
So playground border was installed by Public Works. The swing set is complete, but there was a shortage on the pins, the installation pins. So they're supposed to be in hand either Thursday or Friday. And that'll finish the installation of the project.
And then somebody reported to me that at West Side, the play area had been removed. Is that accurate?
That was removed 3 years ago.
Yeah, so why was that?
So it was in the original plan prior to me taking over for it to be removed. It was in the center field portion of the hardball field, and it was directly under the tree line behind the softball field. Not an ideal location for a swing set and a slide. especially with the balls coming over or through the netting on the softball field, and then the potential for the kids to be running into the field of play for the hardball field.
So, and it may be your predecessor, I don't know. But I know, I mean, my mother used to live on the street right there. We used to play in that park all the time. And so the decision was made, and I guess you supported the decision, to remove it instead of moving it within the park?
Well, at the time when we removed it, we were in the process of the plans for Grand Street to have a new playground installed at Grand Street. Grand Street's only 3 blocks away from the park, 4 blocks away from the park. You also have Wallace Park, which is also about 3 or 4 blocks away, that also provides a playground and play features for the neighborhood people.
Okay.
West Side Field has become more of a sports complex. More baseball games, more softball games running in and out of there weeknights and weekends. It just didn't make sense to have those play features in the middle of the playing field.
I mean, I used to have a client who lived on East Street right there, and, you know, used to feel comfortable, the kids walking across the street into the park. And, you know, but it was a decision that we had nothing to do with. What's going on with the low ropes course at Bertini Park?
So the low ropes course is still there. The YMCA does use it for their summer outward bound and adventure programs. We had the safety inspection done in June. We had some repairs done this past September to get it up to speed. And it really comes down to the main issue that we've always had with it is a staffing issue. The Board of Education, you know, uses it. They try and go out annually, generally with the 5th grade class before they head off to middle school. But it doesn't get a lot of usage.
Do we advertise that it's there?
Again, it's a tough thing because it comes down to staffing. We've always had an issue staffing it. People in town know about it. Do we advertise it that we have a low ropes course? Probably not the best that we could. But again, it comes back to being able to staff it and facilitate it.
So I was in some business I was involved with, and they used the low ropes course as a team building thing. You know, or a portion of it, you know, you're falling off and your team has to catch you and that kind of stuff.
Trust falls and things like that.
Yeah, and I don't recall having staff from Park and Rec there. Are you saying that business can't use that without your staff?
You have to have somebody that's trained and that has been through the certification to put you through the course.
I appreciate getting the information. I appreciate seeing at least a portion of the vision. I'd really, you know, appreciate seeing, and I don't want to belabor you, right? But, you know, Park and Rec, it's fun stuff, right? It's like,
absolutely.
It's like candy and toys. So, you know, I'd like to see the vision, you know. If you had, you know, $1 million, what would you do? You know, I think it would be helpful for, I don't know that we could ever spend, you know, anything like that, and I don't want to waste your time, right? But
I appreciate that. I mean, you know, hopefully you saw what was submitted for potential ARPA funds. I mean, again, there are things that we need to upgrade and maintain before I think we go on to other things.
Agreed, but the majority of your ARPA request is community pool. And, you know, I mean, you represented in your backup that you spoke to some architect and they estimated 8.5 million. You know, we as a body unanimously voted to put it out to bid to have the current facility rehabbed. We have no idea what that number is. So, you know, and I don't want to get into is if that's open, you know, you're open to that, because we just go back and forth on that. But, you know, we're trying to get through the log jam here, so. I appreciate the information, and I'm going to defer. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Counselor Marone.
If you'll indulge me, Mr. Chairman, I have a few slides I'd like to share on the park topic.
Tee it up. I don't know if we need anything from the media department.
All right, so if I can, I'd like to preface my comments by saying I don't think this falls on Mr. Michaels for the most part. I mean, I think that so what happened is Councilor Tata and I sort of toured a few of the select parks with our former commissioner of the Rec Commission to sort of talk about some of the issues in the parks. You know how I get that thing off the middle?
I think it's on the projector. On the projector.
An old guy at the mic. So, all right, so what happened, so Mrs. Tata and I toured just 5 of the parks just to get an idea. So why are we talking about this at all? You know, this isn't strictly about safety. This is not just a rec department issue either, you know, because this has to do with police, it has to do with public works and so on. So, you know, poorly maintained facilities attract vandalism and discourage legitimate use, right? And I think if you tour the parks, you're going to see a lot of vandalism. And maintaining public parks, this is just sort of a basic function of government. So what do? We visited 5 parks at random. Eyes were focused on what we saw were sort of potential of what could happen in the parks. We sort of took some, noted some concerns. You'll recall that at a prior meeting, we had some discussions about playground areas and the fall surfaces at playground areas. So the first park we started at was Loughbury. So you'll notice, like, under the slides there, it's just, you know, it's dirt. It's like regular plain old dirt. And then the photos on the right just show you some sort of the broken pavilion at Loughbury, dangly wires, a lot of dangly wires at our parks in different spots. I'm certain they're not live, so I don't think it's a safety issue. It's just it's an eyesore and sort of a public, or sort of an appearance nuisance, right? Loughbury, there's a fence, the gate's open and unlocked. There's a lot of concrete blocks up there in front of the fence. I'm not sure. I'm guessing that they're in storage from somewhere else. I'm not sure why they're there. There's debris behind the building. Again, just sort of leaves it with sort of an unmaintained appearance.
Okay, I just interject right there. Are you questioning the concrete blocks up on the top right?
Yes.
All right, so the concrete blocks on the top right were installed there to prevent pickup trucks from backing right up to the fence line and tossing their couches and chairs and trash right over the fence. It made it a little bit of a deterrent, so people don't back directly up to that drop and get rid of their household trash.
Perfect. Okay, so the sign at the entrance to the park is broken. It's hard to tell from this picture, but but you can move it around with your hands. So it's just, I don't think it's a safety concern that it's going to fall on a person, but it's something that at some point is going to need to be addressed. Second one we went to was Community Lake. So you see that the swing set area, the dirt was replaced with some kind of sand, which looks like it's very similar to the sand at the beach volleyball court over on the right, or on the lower right. The swings at the top, you'll see someone's flipped over the seat over the swings because the swings are so close to the ground. The bar spins sort of on its own, so again, it's not, it's not dangerous. It's just something that just needs to be maintained. The building at Community Lake, again, a little more dangly wires, inside and out. Someone's made a men's and women's sign on the bathroom by hand. A lot of graffiti and just sort of, marks on the building. The tennis courts, which I was happy to see was included in the ARPA request, have some pretty big cracks in them. The light on the bottom right is on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So it's just, again, it's something that is probably not the most optimal situation. Here's the Wallace Park where they've added, you can see the border and the wood fibers that were added as a fall protection. And I noticed since we took these pictures that it's been added to the next set of swing sets, so I presume you're going all the way around the park?
Correct.
So, at the prior meeting, we talked about fall protection, so clearly there was a concern because this was done and Community Lake was done in between the time we had that meeting to talk about fall protection and when we took the pictures, which was approximately, 2 weeks later perhaps. So, there was obviously a concern that was recognized and it was addressed. So I guess but there still isn't like a standard, across town as to what we see as the appropriate fall protection for these equipment because we use sort of various methods. All right, West Side Field, the scoreboard. I'm not sure that do we own that scoreboard?
We do.
Okay, because the scoreboard's been kind of vandalized and there's a bunch of broken stuff, and then you see someone's put some sort of like tape on it to mark their own kind of whatever. The picture on the top right is the field. That's where the playground equipment used to be. That's not there anymore. On the bottom is just a pole with an opening in it. Again, just small maintenance concerns. So there's 2 buildings at West Side Field. This building has a lot of graffiti on it. You'll see there's holes in the exterior structure. You see where there's holes in the soffits there, are pieces of wood missing. You can hear the critters moving around inside. That propane tank, I'm not sure if that's abandoned or if that's, if there's a legitimate use for that building. But it just seems like having a propane tank, at a building, especially if you're not using it, is sort of an attractive nuisance. Here's the other building at West Side Field. Again, a lot of graffiti. It's sort of damage to the exterior of the building, and so on. Mrs. Ted, did you have anything else you wanted to add to any of my comments?
Just one on Community Lake, where we were talking about the volleyball field, the volleyball court there with the sand. I think one of the reasons we took that picture also was because there's no net on that. And so I think we kind of felt it maybe a missed opportunity, like why is there not a net there? Somebody said that certain people bring a net and attach it. The poles also seem like they're far too high that they need to be. So I just wanted to point that out in that picture. Thank you.
All right, and then this is the famous building that nobody likes at Doolittle. Again, dangly wires, a lot of graffiti, a lot of holes in the building. The same kind of stuff you're seeing all over the place. I thought this was interesting. There's advertising at Doolittle Park. The Rotary donated that structure, so thanks to the Rotary for that structure, and they deserve to have their name up there. But this is advertising of the parks is something we have conceived of in the past as a way to pay for some of these improvements. And you can see a list of companies there on the left. If you look at some of these are still around, some aren't, which is kind of neat when you go back to the 1991 when this project was contemplated. And thank goodness the Rotary was willing to donate that other structure. But again, there's an example where we were advertising, some of the donor of the item, which I think is entirely appropriate. Down on the bottom left, this is by the eyesore building that we looked at before. This area used to have playground equipment in it as well, which has since been removed. Do we know how long that equipment's been gone for?
About 12 years.
So, if you had little kids at the park, obviously we have the big, beautiful play area. We also have this area that's sort of like unused at this point. And then on the right, there's sort of, from not an expert, but just a regular person view is sort of dangerous steps at the park. So again, this list isn't intended to be comprehensive. This is just sort of like, the parks are something I'm passionate about. I think if we're looking for places that I'm not sure that the structure that we have now, our budgetary structure from year to year, is going to accomplish addressing a lot of these concerns. I think maybe we need to look at something a little bit bigger in terms of multi-departments and how we're going to, what's the plan? How are we going to finance this stuff in the future? Community pool is empty and it's kind of messy, and it's going to remain that way until we come up with the money, I guess, to do something different with it. So it's kind of like if you're never going to do anything with it, maybe you sell it, or maybe you put another building on it, or you do something completely different. But I just hate to see these sort of spaces allowed to deteriorate or just sort of, taken apart piece by piece because we don't want to spend the money to invest in them. So that's it. That's all I have for the slideshow, and thank you for indulging me, Mr. Chairman.
Counselor Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate, I hadn't seen those before. You know, in the interim, we got a letter from Mr. Triber, I believe it was him. He's a licensed playground safety.
Certified playground safety inspector.
Yeah. Do you know, is there a manual of the standards? For what is the standard? You know, because I saw some stuff there that I know wouldn't be allowed in a residential property. So I'm just trying to figure out, is there a book that I can go buy that says, you know, that holes in the middle of concrete stairs is appropriate? And
I have no idea.
okay, so you're not
I'm not a certified playground safety inspector.
okay. The rail that I saw in the last picture, it was like a rail that you see on the highway. The word doesn't come to mind.
Guardrail?
Yeah, a guardrail. It appeared that it was on the ground and it just needed bolts, like to come up, get bolted. Is that
That's the first time I saw it, so your assumption is probably the same as what mine's going to be.
okay? So I have no idea how long, you know, it's been there, but do you tour the parks as far as like safety and that kind of stuff? And
I do.
to look for that kind of stuff?
Guardrails, I mean, I look at more of like the field component, the park features. You know, I take a look at the vandalism, the graffiti. I didn't notice that portion, just did now. But that's something that I would, you know, send a memo over to Rob at Public Works, you know, requesting that it be lifted and rebolted.
Okay, and what about the graffiti? I mean, has there been some sort of communication with regard to?
Yep, and the picture's up there. West Side Field was taken care of, so if you look at the hardball field, it's been painted. The garage and the restrooms and the concession stand, and same with the other building.
But what initiated that?
What initiated it to be painted?
Yes.
We had a phone call from somebody that it was painted. So the buildings will get painted. Like, I'll use Doolittle as an example. We'll cover up the graffiti at Doolittle, and within 2 days, we'll get a call, hey, they graffitied the building again. So then, you know, we got to go and repaint the building. Same thing with West Side. You know, you cover up the graffiti, and 2-3 days later, it's been graffitied again.
And then what do you do when you call Department of Public Works, you report it? We got to do something about it?
And when they can get out there to schedule to get it painted, they'll paint it to cover it up.
Okay, and in your experience, what kind of timeline are you dealing with?
It varies, to be honest with you. It varies. It could be a couple of days, it could be a couple of weeks. All depends on their workload, their schedule, their staffing.
Okay, when's the last time you called Public Works about graffiti?
Three weeks ago, 4 weeks ago,
And where was that?
West Side. Maybe a little longer than that, maybe about 4 or 5 weeks ago.
And that's the repairs that recently got done as a result of that call?
Correct.
And that graffiti that we saw in those pictures was new, or?
I believe that's been taken care of. I believe
I
that's
understand.
gone.
It's gone now. But I'm just trying to figure out, was it graffiti that was there for 6 months and then
No,
was a
no.
call and?
No, generally, it's not there that long.
Okay. What's your department's relationship with Public Works like? How would you describe it? Is it cooperative? Is it communicative?
It's communicative. It's cooperative to a point where do they have the staff, or does our requests or workload get into their work schedule? You know, from what I understand now, my communication with Rob, I talk to Rob just about almost every day. You know, we discuss getting back to monthly meetings where him and I will meet to discuss punch lists and follow-ups and things that need to get done, things that have been completed. But I also do know that they're running into an issue staffing-wise, as far as, you know, open positions, trying to fill positions, projects. So it all comes down to where does our stuff fit into their schedule?
Well, is it something that you would be desirous of having somebody on your staff to
So I do have 2 part-timers, a second one that I'm actually just in the process of hiring. You talked about perfect world, right? You talked about $1 million. You know, if I'm looking at a vision and I have a wish list, it would be to have our own parks crew, to alleviate some of the work from Public Works.
Okay, and if you were to get, how many people would you be looking at?
I would say at least a crew of 4.
Full-time or part-time?
Full-time.
Okay. And would you need machinery, or is it mostly supplies?
No, there would probably have to be some machinery unless there's some shared cooperation with Public Works, right? They have the field grooming equipment, the lawn mowing equipment, the power tools. You know, is that something where it's a cooperative working agreement where, you know, we utilize that equipment?
Have you ever engaged a private consultant with regard to making recommendations about safety in the parks?
I have not, no.
Are you aware that other towns do?
I guess. I mean...
Was that something that you'd find...
It's nothing I've had a discussion with any of my colleagues with.
Okay. I just, you know, I go to other towns and, you know, I don't see a lot of what I saw here today. So I'm just trying to figure out how do we make our parks at least look better, right? So hopefully we get there. But thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Allenson?
Hi. So my comments are not really, they're a little bit for you, but, and this is not me defending you, I guess, per se, but I don't know that I have just kind of said around the room that I'm very uncomfortable with this conversation taking place in this way. It feels more like an interrogation, and we want people to want to work for the town. We want people to, and again, I'm not putting words in your mouth. I'm certainly, this is certainly nothing that has been ever said to me, but I do feel like I've been in enough of these meetings where we've, we being the Queens, have interrogated people to an extent that is making me feel uncomfortable. I don't know, and this might be the way that these things are handled in public forums and in politics on a broader scale, but we have to understand that these are people who work for us. They all want to do good by the town. They are not self-interested. You don't go into public service. It's not a profit industry. Wallingford is certainly not a for-profit town. We all have the same interests, and asking in the air of interest is one thing, but I am uncomfortable with conversations continuing to feel as if we couldn't have had this behind closed doors, and we couldn't have made this into a meeting from a more collaborative approach. I don't care about the time it takes to have these conversations. I just care about the fact that we have a history, since I've been on this council, of calling people forward and then treating them poorly in the way that we ask our questions. And I am just, like, I know that there's nothing that I can do about this stopping, but as far as my concerns, I just don't know that this is entirely the appropriate place to have such a micro-level conversation. I do understand, and I appreciate Councilors Marone and Tata going to the parks and sharing this information with us, but it does feel a bit like a blindside to me also, because there was a presentation prepared and I don't believe we were sent it. So I do appreciate all of the work that's being done here, but in the interest of wanting people to continue to want to work for this town, I just have to raise my concern about the way that we ask questions, because it does not feel collaborative to me right now. So that's really all I have to say.
Counselor Tata.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. I just wanted to say the kind of the reason we went out was because we'd been hearing about parks and there's some complaints, whatever, and so Councilor Maroon and I were kind of talking, and I said, well, let's, I don't want to take anybody's word for it. Let's just go out and we'll see for ourselves, which is what we did. And so, like he said, we just kind of, we had a few hours, so we just got to as many as we could, kind of geographically, going from one to the next. We just picked them at random. And there were some things that some of them or certain things at the parks, they were in better shape than I thought, and then other things were worse than what I would hope for. So I think, some of the pictures just showed that. And I think just, rather than everyone have to go to all of them, that was kind of the reason for sharing the pictures. But it's good to hear that some of the vandalism was cleaned up since we were there. And I understand that's probably an ongoing issue for you. But a couple of things that we didn't share pictures of, I just wanted to touch base on. The new tennis courts at Doolittle, which look great, but it looks like there's been patches put on them. I'm assuming there was maybe like low areas that were pooling with water. Can you just give us an update on that and what's going on with that, or why there was the need for patches?
Yeah, there was a bubbling and a low spot on the east side of the tennis courts, the northeast side of the tennis courts. So what was described to us by the vendor was that area had what was considered a bad pour of concrete, so it did end up settling. Not to the point where, water did sit there, but within a day or two it was gone. They did come in, they elevated it, they patched it, and then repainted it. He said within probably about another year to year and a half, it'll fade in and blend in with the original paint job.
Okay, so you're satisfied with that?
Mm-hmm.
That-
Yeah,
that's
it's
the
not.
solution?
It's nowhere near what it was before. It's not bubbling, and that repair was done probably about 6-7 months ago.
Okay. Is that under any sort of a warranty or anything because it's brand new, or that's what they do? They come and they fix it?
No, they came and did it because it was still under the warranty. The paint, I'm not sure on what the paint warranty is, but the structure warranty I think is 20 years.
Okay. All right. So if in 5 years it does that again, they would.
No, so that would be, I don't know if that would be considered the structure component, the sink, but the structure component would be if it ever cracked.
Okay.
If the court starts to crack or starts splitting like Councilor Marone showed on the courts, which are bituminous blacktop over at Community Lake, the post-tension concrete's not supposed to crack. And that's why it has the 20-year lifespan. If it does, then it's covered under the warranty.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And then I think just overall, what my takeaway was from the 5 that we visited was just, I think it seems like just a general, they're basically maintenance items. We didn't see anything huge, well, besides the playscape that was set on fire, which I know we're working on fixing, but, it's basically maintenance items. And I understand over the years, as if you're, Public Works can't get to things, or if you have a list of things and they're not getting to, that just keeps snowballing. And then, 20 years later, now we're faced with, this park looks terrible because it's basically 20 years of maintenance issues, backing up. So I think that was my main takeaway, is that I didn't see anything major. It was just all these little maintenance items that I think maybe, look like maybe they're snowballing a little bit. And it helps to hear that you ultimately would like a park staff, so you could handle it. I don't know if that's something we want to look at budget time, but that's good to know. But then in regards to the commission, I think somebody said it earlier, but I too was a little bit disappointed to hear that they're only going to be meeting 4 times a year now, because I think our prior commission met, I believe, monthly, and it seems to me like there's enough for them to do where monthly meetings would be a good thing for the town. So I don't know if maybe they'll reconsider that, but I just wanted to make a comment on that also. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else? There being none, questions or comments from the public?
Wallingford and Palmer Avenue. I can't resist, since you showed the great building at Doolittle. Maybe a question to the mayor, what's the status on the blight complaint, the unsafe structure enforcement with that building, that eyesore that is loaded with graffiti right now? You should read what the graffiti says on the building right now. Very interesting. But is there any status update on that while we're seeing that? As usual, it decays. Thank you.
Evening, Jason Michael, 81 Meadow Street. I'll start, and I'll try to be as brief as I can, addressing Councilor Allenson's comments about this making her uncomfortable. I'm just as uncomfortable, but you made a comment in your comments about having these discussions behind closed doors. That makes me really uncomfortable. I think that this is healthy, although it doesn't feel good. I think, 3 commissioners stepped down from positions they loved. Had they not done that, we wouldn't be here talking about this and coming up with solutions. And on another note, I'm curious, when the park walkthrough happened with the risk manager, was there a report generated and given to town hall or any of you? Because verbally we were told there were 0 safety issues found. Now, I'm also not a park inspector, but just from the photos we saw, what is a safety issue? And I said I would follow this through to the end, so if you're tired of seeing me, I'm sorry, but we're 50 some odd days past that walkthrough. We're 60 some odd days past the stepping down of the commission. And there are still playground equipment out there with nothing underneath it. In fact, the town has dug down 6-8 inches and left it even more dangerous for weeks. I get to watch the entire downtown get decorated for Christmas or the holidays. I watch backfilling and paving and grading of inconsequential parking lots while these places stay the way they are. Is there a shortage on mulch? I understand the equipment of the border, but why is the ground underneath these apparatuses left rock hard and bare? I don't get it. 2 guys with a pickup truck and a wheelbarrow could have done all of them by now. So staffing issues, I can't swallow that. Either close them off, or take them out, or make them safe. That's it. Thank you.
Anyone else? There being none, I bring it back to the council. Councilor Tata.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, I forgot to mention this before. One of the things that we saw were some of the pavilions and the buildings, and like at Community Lake, there's the bathrooms, and it seems like most of those are locked and closed. Is that something that we can look at in the near future to be able to use? I think like there's some of the fields that we have bathroom facilities, but then there's porta potties outside. Is that something that maybe we could start using those again? 'Cause I think it would be nicer to have indoor facilities. And I've heard, I don't know if it's true, you can confirm or not, that the reason we don't use them is because of vandalism. So I just didn't know if you could.
Are you talking about like use during the day or use for?
Well, whenever. So for example, I think Loughbury has bathroom facilities that are locked. Community Lake, same thing. I think maybe West Side Field.
Yep.
Yeah, ones like those.
So the leagues are supposed to have keys. So if there's games or things going on, they're supposed to unlock them and open them. Community Lake, for example, there's a magnetic box right inside the equipment box. So when the coaches, umpire, whoever comes, unlocks that box, they can take the key out. Now, whether the key's still in there or not, that I can't answer to. But there was one put in there because I put it in. They're supposed to come unlock the bathroom so when there's games going on and people are there, they can come and use the bathrooms. And then when the games are over and everybody leaves, they lock up the restrooms and they go. If you're talking about leaving them open from sunrise to sunset, it's not something we have done. I won't say it's not something we can't do, but it's just not something that we have done. there are mechanisms where you can set timers on locks or on doors, so they can unlock and lock as they go. I think there is a worry of vandalism or things that can go on as the parks aren't monitored during the day, so who knows what is going on in the restrooms. So that's another, that was another concern.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I hate to see, that we have indoor, like, restroom facilities and there's, like, porta potties outside. So I guess, I don't know, I mean, I guess it comes down to, kind of our overall issues. If we're not ever going to use those again, or if we're only going to use them at certain times, then why are we even keeping them? If we're, maybe we just make a decision that we're just going to have porta potties at the parks, and that's the decision we want to make, and then we can just get rid of these eyesore buildings. But if not, if we are going to keep them, then I think we need to maybe.
Well, you don't want to get rid of the pavilion at Community Lake. I mean, the bathrooms are attached to the pavilion. You keep it there. It's one of the most heavily used pavilions as far as, rentals and reservations. And then it's the Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night home of Wallingford Little League. So, I think that would be a mistake just to consider getting rid of those.
But then that has, that looks like it has maybe like a concession stand or a kitchen inside, something, or?
No, it's like a utility closet. There used to be a service window with there's like what do you call it, a mud sink or something like that, one of those big oversized sinks, but it's not really a concession stand. Okay. It's not functional.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Michael.
All right. That seems to be the end of that discussion. Can I get a motion to go into executive session, please?
Mr. Chairman, I move we go into executive session pursuant to Connecticut General Statute Section 1-225F and Section 1-2006B regarding strategy and negotiations with respect to the following pending litigation: 55 Kondraki Lane Property, LLC versus Town of Wallingford, 866 Wallingford Corp. versus Town of Wallingford, and Joseph Voll, trustee, versus Town of Wallingford Appeals.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor of going into executive session signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There being none, I declare the council in executive session. Kindly clear the chambers. I call the meeting back to order. Is there a motion to come out of executive session?
I move we come out of executive session.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All those in favor of coming out of executive session signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, I declare the council back in public session. Can I get a motion on number 12?
Mr. Chairman, I move we authorize the settlement in the pending tax appeal matter of 55 Kondraki Lane Property LLC versus Town of Wallingford as discussed in executive session.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Allenson?
Yes.
Carmody?
Yes.
Fishbein?
Yes.
Laffin?
Yes.
Marone?
Yes.
Tata?
Yes.
Testa? Zandri?
Yes.
Chairman Cervoni?
Yes, the motion passes. Can I get a motion on number 13?
I move we authorize the settlement in the pending tax appeal matter of 866 Wallingford Court versus Town of Wallingford as discussed in executive session.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? There being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Motion on 14.
I move we authorize settlement in the pending tax appeal matter of Joseph Ball, trustee, versus Town of Wallingford, as discussed in executive session.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion on the motion. There being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. And I declare this meeting adjourned.